we go. Harry, show me your moves. You have moves?
I thought you wanted me not to move on this chair.
There you go. So here we are, back in the studio, and no, not laughs. Applause.
Thank you.
And today I'm just so lucky to have Harry Kalymnios in the house. I didn't press that button. I don't know why that happened.
I'll forgive you. It's all right. Don't worry.
Harry Kalymnios, I did right with your last name.
You did, yeah. Well done.
There you go.
Awesome.
Listen, mate, thank you so much for being here today. You came today from Brighton.
That's right. I spent a few days in Brighton enjoying the sea. And after, like, my sister lives in Brighton, and this is the first time. Last year was the first year that I'd actually gone in the sea in Brighton after 20 years of going to Brighton. I never got to do it. And then this time I managed to get in the sea 3 days in a row.
How was the temperature? Was it cold?
It's not that bad, actually. I don't know. I'd probably say about 18 degrees, which is not too bad.
18 is decent. I know when I just started doing the cold water swim in Thames, which is in Slough, which is quite clean Thames.
Yeah.
It's like a Jubilee Thames, they call it.
Yeah.
It was 16 degrees, and I remember I would be no wetsuit, but I could feel it's quite chill.
Yeah.
But 18 degrees.
I think it was slightly... yeah, because I remember doing the triathlon years ago in the Thames as well, and that was like 19, and it felt cooler than that. But I was in Devon last week, North Devon, and that seemed warmer. Like,
how is your relationship with cold water? Have you done any cold water therapies and stuff?
You know, I've dabbled with it, like you know, dabbled with the cold showers now and then, and I have been wanting to put maybe like a permanent cold bath in my garden.
Yeah. That's what I used to have. I actually just removed it. I had this thing I paid it 30-40 pounds. It's just like a little bath. But now, since I'm a member of David Lloyd's Bracknell Leisure, which is an amazing place, and I do cold bath every day.
Have they got a cold thing there?
Sorry?
Have they got a cold plunge thing?
Yeah.
Have
It's about 7 degrees,
wow.
6 degrees, very decent. Well, I got used to 2 degrees in Bali.
Wow.
Yeah, so I do sauna for 20-25 minutes, and then I do that for 4 or 5 minutes. And did you know that you actually can go in cold water longer if you haven't done sauna before?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I've done like cold therapy. I have done ice baths. So I remember we did like this mass men's event once. I went with a few mates, and there was like about 100 guys, and we were doing lots of like the Wim Hof breathing, and then we all kind of jumped in this big, I think it might be even a picture on my Instagram somewhere from like maybe a few years ago.
Oh god.
Yeah, well,
it's gonna take me a while to
no,
find
it won't take you that long. Yeah, it's not that many posts actually, but yeah, I think it was actually just October 2019 probably, because it was just after I had surgery. But there was an ice bath there, so we did that. And I've done cryotherapy a few times.
Yeah, I never tried it. I heard a lot of good things about it.
It's a lot easier than the ice baths.
But the only problem with it, it's very expensive.
Yeah, I used to go to this place in Liverpool Street. I think it was like 60 quid for 3 minutes. Plus you got 20 minutes on Normatec trousers. You know the Normatecs? The kind of inflatable type
Some of my stunt performers, free runners, they were advertising them. I could see, like, in the beginning I thought, it's like your leg broken or something, because that thing looks just like a cast.
Yeah, well, I bought a cheap man's version of that from my dad, and he uses that like most days because he's got like you know, dodgy circulation in his legs.
Right.
And so he just sits there, watch TV, and then you put them on. And I use it when I can as well, whenever I'm around there. And it's like about a quarter of the price of the Normatecs, but I think they're good. I think they.
So what is it? Warm?
No.
It's cold.
It's just in air, and it will just like.
Oh, just presses in. Oh.
It presses, releases.
It's like pulsating kind of thing.
So it restricts the blood flow, and then allows the blood to flow back. And you just sit there for half an hour watching TV whilst having that, and it's good for things like DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness.
Yeah.
If you've been cycling a lot, doing leg workouts or whatever, I don't do a huge amount of that stuff, so my legs are not really ever that sore. But I've had it for like, you know, just relaxation. My sister loves it; she just falls asleep straight away when she's using it. So yeah, in Liverpool Street it was 60 quid for 20 minutes on Normatec, and then 3 minutes on that, and you get down to about minus 180 or something ridiculous, or and I find that easier, to be fair, than cold showers.
That's what people keep saying.
It's easier.
Can you just move your mic a little bit? Like, I see that you're turning to me, not to there, just to the
like
side.
Yeah. Oh, hang on a second. Like that.
There you go.
Oh, is that going to work? Yeah, okay. Hopefully that's okay.
That's good.
So, yeah, but like the swimming in the water was, I don't mind it actually. It's because once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
And you just got to deal with it. The shower, it's too easy to kind of just go to the hot again. And my old showers in my old flat, they never really went that cold anyway.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I started talking to you about the cold water therapies, I mean, you are quite a health freak, you know, and we're going to talk about this a little bit further. And then that's what I was wondering, because that's one of the things what anyone who is in health and fitness, it really helps. And I've been doing this now for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm following strictly Wim Hof's all the breathing. I did it for a while. Got kind of bored a little bit, and you need to really commit. But the cold stuff, it just wakes you up. It makes just feel so much better. And also because I always get sore muscles from, especially now doing BJJ, I'm pretty much every day sore. Like yesterday I was rolling for 2 hours and I'm like, I feel today. So that's what I was wondering, if you've done more research in that and done yourself.
I mean, I've done a bit of research. I mean, the question always gets asked, and I've heard it asked in other podcasts, and I don't think I've ever heard a good answer for it, so I'm going to give you my answer. But they always say, like, you know, how long do you need to be in, like, the cold for, or like the cold shower?
Right.
Like, and some people say, well, just 30 seconds, whatever. But I think the actual answer, I think, is and how cold does it need to be? I think in terms of how cold it needs to be, I think it needs to be cold enough that you feel a shock.
Yeah.
Right? Because the whole point is it's supposed to activate your stress response. And then you have to be in it long enough until you get over that shock and you're able to kind of normalize your breathing, normalize your thing.
And everyone is going to be different as well.
Everyone's going to be different. So rule of thumb might be, you know, have a normal shower and then finish on cold for 30 seconds. But, you know, maybe that 30 seconds is 20 seconds, maybe it's 40 seconds, maybe, you know, it doesn't have to be all the way to cold. It just has to be enough that, like, I think you're cold enough that it creates a shock. And the whole point of it is it's creating that stress response. And the idea is that you're able to manage yourself through that stress response, which is why the Wim Hof is all like, it's hyperventilating breathing and it's activating a stress response, and it's not the kind of breathing we normally would teach in, say, a yoga class or something like that. We normally teach breathing that activates your parasympathetic, not your sympathetic nervous system.
Great. We're going to talk about yoga as well. The thing what I wanted to say about cold water, my experience was, as soon as I started doing it, I remember one of my mates who used to do it a lot. He told me that the rule of thumb is you need to get out of the water when your jaw starts shaking. He said,
really?
yeah, as soon as you like literally start shaking, you should get out. That's not good for you anymore.
Yeah.
And I remember I could get, not going from sauna, but just going just normally in cold, I could go for 5 degrees for about 4 or 5 minutes, you know, and then I remember my jaw starts shaking. And I think at the beginning when I started doing it, I didn't really understand what I'm doing. And I would be like getting out and like all red, and I'm trying to get the blood flow, like push-ups, jumping around and stuff. It was very weird, but you know, I realized it's really something what I would like to do.
One of the, like yesterday I went to like a hot yoga class, and then the teacher and a few of our students went for a swim in the sea afterwards, which I was planning to do anyway, so it's nice that they had some people. But she was saying, and I've heard this before, but she was saying kind of rule of thumb is you stay in for as long as the temperature of the water is. So say if the water is
that's a good one.
If the water is 6 degrees, you're staying for 6 minutes. If it's 18 degrees, staying for 18 minutes. If it's 2 degrees, staying for 2 minutes.
I like that one.
Yeah, and then my other friend, he used to go to the Lido up at Hampstead Heath things, and I think he met a woman who was swimming year round, and she used to do as many lengths as the temperature of the water. So if it was a 2 degree day, she would do 2 lengths.
Just
if it was 6 degrees, she would do 6 lengths. So somewhat similar, because the length would take about a minute.
Yeah, when I just started doing it, and I can quickly open, I don't need to show it. Anyone who wants to can look it up on my Instagram. So I started doing this with one other stunt guy, Tomas Paredes, Spanish guy. And I remember we went for did the 5 degrees, and for us that was crazy. We just like, oh my God. And in Thames, when you have 4 degrees in like a bath, it's totally different when it's 4 or 5 degrees in Thames or in the river. in open water. And I remember we got out, we're like, oh man, we did so good. Like, look, we did 2-3 minutes. And then we were just getting in the cars and about to leave. And we see these ladies just coming back from like, no wetsuits, nothing. And I'm like, how long, guys, were you in the water? And like, oh, about half an hour. I'm like,
Yeah, I bet they don't get ill.
yeah, but they're like, they've done this. And I was like, how long you been doing this? Yeah, for a couple of years.
Yeah.
That's what we do and kind of thing. Okay. So we just kind of straight away went talking about cold waters and therapies, but that's how the conversation sometimes goes. I would like to talk about a little bit you, where you're from, where you grew up, and a little bit of your kind of history.
Okay, yeah. So didn't grow up too far from here, London. Right?
Oh, okay.
So
40 minutes. About those who don't know, Bracknell is 40 minutes, 50 minutes away from London.
So born and raised in London.
Which side of London?
North London.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, kind of grew up kind of Wood Green, Tottenham area, like where Tottenham play football.
Yeah.
Then moved a little bit further north when I was quite young, and then went to school, went to uni up in Manchester. Then went travelling for a few years. Well, a few.
What did you do for uni in Manchester?
I did a degree in physics with astrophysics.
In physics?
Yeah.
Those are supposed to be very smart people who done physics.
Yeah.
What happened here?
I did all right, my A-levels and my degree, thank you. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you pursue your like life and your career in physics?
No, because I don't do
Not
anything
really.
with it now. But and I didn't really like all the experimentation stuff and all of that sort of stuff. But I was curious, and I was actually better probably at maths growing up than I was physics. But I felt that maths would have been, I don't know, not interesting enough. Although on reflection, I think I would have preferred to do a maths degree because I do find maths actually quite beautiful. Whereas physics, what annoyed me was there was a lot of approximations, especially when it comes to astrophysics. There's always these approximations that were being made, whereas maths is quite pure.
What is approximation, sorry?
So where you basically round things up or down, you make...
Oh, approximately. Okay, so from word approximately,
yeah. And I'm not sure I really liked that so much, and, the maths got a bit kind of dumbed down or simplified. But anyway, I did the degree, did very well in it, and did nothing with it since then, really, other than it's a nice conversation piece, and it's sitting on my mantelpiece. But yeah, then went travelling for a couple of years. So I went to some of the places we were talking about before: Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia, Malaysia, Indonesia. Not Bali, but the rest of a bit of Indonesia. Spent a year in Australia. Moved to New Zealand for a few months. Then Central America, South Pacific. So I was gone for just over 2 years, about 25 months. Came back for a few months, then went and lived in Greece for 6 months in Crete, doing kind of a placement at a technical college there. I somehow, 3 years after graduating, was able to get my old university to sponsor me and pay for me to go to this thing in Greece. Came back, worked in a local pub, the same pub I used to drink in when I was like 17, 18 years old.
What's the name of the pub?
Queen's Head.
Shout out, Queen's Head.
Yeah, Queen's Head in Winchmore Hill. So I worked there for a bit, then I worked in a law firm. Eventually,
straight from the pub.
Yeah.
Didn't feel the difference.
Yeah, well, I was, what was I doing? I was a temp at a law firm.
Making drinks.
Well, not for the lawyers, although they probably needed it. And then worked there for about a year and a half. Then ended up working at the London Stock Exchange for a company called Accenture, so quite a big consulting company. And actually, how I got that job was a bit bizarre as well, because I bumped into a guy that I used to know quite well when I was in the Scouts. So I used to be in the Scouts for like...
Of course you were.
Yeah, from the age of about 6, I was in like the Beavers, Cubs, and then Scouts, and I was a leader. So from basically 6 to 21...
It would be funny if you would say that you were in Beavers when if you would live in Canada. I'm into Beavers.
Yeah, well, it's still the same here, isn't it? Same connotations.
Is it?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah, Beavers. Yeah. But I think it was, Beavers, Cubs, Scouts, Venture Scouts, leaders, and which was actually really, really instructive, really formative years. And anyway, I bumped into him on the train. He worked there. and he put my CV in front of his boss. So I ended up like at Accenture for 3 years and the stock exchange for 6 years. Three with Accenture, 3 directly with the stock exchange. Left there, went to work at Sainsbury's head office as a freelancer, as a contractor. But it was around this sort of time, which is when I made that transition. So out of the stock exchange, I left and I started getting more into personal development, mindset, health, ideas that shifted my paradigm.
And that was age of what? And what changed?
So
what
that was
inspired you to do those?
in 2010.
2010.
So 11 years ago.
Yeah.
I was, how old was I? I guess 32, 33. Yeah, I would have been about 32, I guess, 33. So years before that, I'd picked up various books, and probably in 2006, I read a book, and it mentioned NLP. If you're familiar with NLP,
Neuro-linguistic programming. Yeah.
And so I started getting into NLP, which for anyone watching or listening is really just a set of tools to understand how we think in a way, how we process things, if you like. And it's not really psychology, but it's kind of a set of mindset tools. And a lot of people have issues with NLP, saying it's it can be manipulative, it can be this, but actually I always say, look, it's like anything, right? Nothing is good or bad, right? So a knife is not good or bad. A knife could be used to cut
it's all about how you use it,
and
basically.
make amazing food, or it can be used to stab someone, right? So it's just a tool. And all it really was, in fact, NLP is they're observing things that were already happening with people. For example, how do friends behave? And then they kind of codified it and said, okay, this is what we see, matching and mirroring, for example, where people who are in close relationships, they might mirror each other's body language. And then all they were doing was effectively labeling what was already being observed. That's the essence of it. So I started getting into that, and then through the NLP stuff, I learned about people like Tony Robbins as well, and started getting into some of his audio programs. Went on a couple of
The Giant Inside You, was it Wake the Giant?
Awake the Giant Within.
Yeah, Awake the Giant Within.
So the first book I read was Unlimited Power of his, and I started listening to a bunch of his audio programs. This was back in 2008. 2009
Do you remember what was the reason when you got into this in the books, like self-development, what would say a path?
Yeah,
because I remember very vividly what was my first. It was Paulo Coelho, Alchemist.
No, I remember mine very vividly.
Yeah, how was it? What happened?
So I think in 2005 I'd broken up with a girl that I'd been seeing for about 2 years.
Of course there's going to be a girl.
Yeah, and a friend of mine who didn't actually read this book gave me this book, and the book was actually called The Game.
Oh, I read it's by Strauss, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't really take any action on that from like a romantic relationship point of view, but in that book it mentioned the word NLP, I think.
Oh, yes, they did.
And then from reading that, I started to kind of go down the rabbit hole of NLP, Tony Robbins and all that. So that's really what I got out of that book. So it didn't really help me from a relationship point of view.
Yeah.
But so that's what's got me started. And then, one of my sisters had also been on a personal development called ISA, the Institute for Self-Actualization. And she did that, I think, in 2006. And then I did it in 2007. Actually, I think Tony Robbins did it as well when he was like back in the 80s, I seem to remember. Anyway, so I did that, and that kind of festered in the background. And then when I got redundancy, so I got made redundant in 2010 from the stock exchange, which was something that I was looking at doing anyway, or wanting to get, because they made my entire team redundant around 2010 during the aftermath of the financial crisis.
Oh, I remember that very well. I moved away from Latvia in 2009, where it was a mental crisis, and that's how I ended up in Canada. And then we met around 2011, 2012 on Toastmasters. And that's how far we're going back. We actually met about 10 years ago.
Yeah, so that was all part of the journey, right? So like, I remember the reason I started Toastmasters was because I remember going to this event called the Yes Group. So the Yes Group I learnt about through going on an NLP
You know the
course.
film with the Jim Carrey, Yes
Yeah,
Man?
it's not quite like that. Everyone thinks like that.
Did you guys end up naked there?
No. But it's it actually, I think the word is an acronym. It stands for Your Excellence Succeeds. I think it stands for. But basically, I ended up at this thing called the Yes Group, which I was actually a member of for many years, and ended up becoming the leader of the Yes Group a few years later, back in 2017. But so I met someone on an NLP course who said, there's this thing called the Yes Group, and at the Yes Group there's loads of speakers. Like, it's, you know, it's great, right? We have like some really popular speakers.
Was there a group called Maybe Group?
Maybe. I wouldn't know about it.
Sorry, I just could
not committed enough. Anyway, one of the speakers there was saying, look, if you want to be a coach or whatever, and at that point I was thinking, after the NLP course, they were saying, oh, you know, when you coach your clients and stuff, and I was thinking to myself, what clients? I mean, I'm not doing NLP to coach clients, but then it's got me into my head thinking, oh, maybe I should do something to do with coaching. Anyway, this speaker at the Yes Group said, well, if you're going to be a coach, why speak one-to-one, telling people what you do? You should speak on the stage, because you can tell your story to many people, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's what got me into Toastmasters, because I was like, actually, you know, maybe I should learn to speak in public. And so
those who don't know what Toastmasters are, it's unprofit company, no, not company, organization, which was started in the United States with
back in the 1920s, 100 years ago.
It was in what was the name of the club? NYC something. It's for youngsters.
Or YMCA.
Yeah, YMCA.
Maybe it was came out of that. I can't remember.
Because I looked into the history a while ago, and basically the Toastmasters actually stand for what exactly it means. It was about learning how to give toasts nicely, you know, properly, because back in the days it was a big deal to give a toast. And even now, also one of the reasons why people started doing Toastmaster, I remember we had a lot of people who like, oh, I have best man speech.
That's it. Yeah, loads of people that wait till 6 weeks before they've got to give a speech.
There you go. And then they come and then they do their speech and they never come back.
Exactly. Right. You know, or they sometimes they get a promotion and they want to get, you know, be better and all of that. Yeah. And actually one of the things I do now is teach public speaking in schools.
Oh, nice. Nice.
14 and 15-year-olds.
That's very rewarding.
And I always tell them, look, you don't want to wait till 6 weeks before you give a best man speech, before you start learning this. Learn it at 14, 15, carry on. And then by the time you doing your best man speech, or you get your promotion, or you start your business, you're going to have those skills. Because number one fear out there is fear of public speaking, right?
That's one of the biggest ones.
I think it's the biggest one according to a lot of research.
It is.
Even bigger than number two, which is death.
Yeah,
and I always say to the kids, I go, when you think about that, and I think I got this from Jerry Seinfeld, it was like, you know, the person, if you think about a funeral, the person giving the eulogy, right, the speech at the funeral, would rather be in the coffin than do the speech, right? They're more afraid of doing the speech than they are being in the coffin. It makes no sense, right?
Yeah, I think I heard that one before, and you're right. The public speaking is the something what people are the most afraid of. Actually, funny enough, this question was discussed on my second podcast, which is 20 podcasts away, basically. Yeah, because it was me and Chris, who is stand-up comedy guy, and he did Toastmasters for years. He was actually president of Toastmasters Club in Bali, and then his current girlfriend, and they're expecting a baby now. Woo, congrats, guys. She's also Toastmasters, and that's what we're talking about, Toastmasters, the history and all that. And it's number one, fear. And the one interesting fact, one of the best public speakers in the world, you see, like CEOs of different companies, presidents and all that, that was the number fear for them as well. And then but they kind of faced it and they went for it, and they became the best speakers.
Well, I mean, you look at Warren Buffett, who is one of the richest men in the world, like the Sage of Omaha, 90 years old, worth 100 billion now. Bill Gates is mentor, whatever you think of Bill Gates, irrelevant, but like when he's in his office, Warren Buffett, he went to like Wharton School, so it's like one of the top Ivy League schools in the country. He doesn't have a certificate from Wharton on his wall. He's got his certificate of public speaking from the Dale Carnegie public speaking course, which is, Dale Carnegie is the guy that wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People.
I read that book. Amazing book.
Yeah, right, one of the top books. And he's got his public speaking certificate, because he was like, this has been really responsible for a lot of my success, and it's so important, more so than the degree from Wharton.
Yeah.
So, you know, for anyone listening out there, like I would say, look, most people are going to be afraid of public speaking. I'd say the club that we belong to, 95% of people that join Toastmasters are afraid of public speaking. 5% are probably not afraid. I think like you and I were probably not in that afraid category, but we just wanted to get
learn and understand how it works properly.
Better at our skills. But 95% of people are afraid.
Yeah. Because things like, and you know, quickly just to go through the first thing, what you need to do, you do 10 speeches, which is the communicator. What was that? Competent communicator. Yeah. And then so like one of the first one was the icebreaker, but then second one, a third goes body language, eye contact. Stage presence and things like
props.
Things like even if you look, and that's like for a stand-up comedian it works so well, when you do the eye contact, you do the zigzag system, which they were teaching in Toastmasters. Instead of like locking eyes on one person in front, you look there, and all these kind of things I would not know them about. Also moving from one stage from the side to the other,
stage anchoring,
all that kind of stuff is really,
and you get
really
loads
good.
of great feedback in Toastmasters. And you learn how to speak by giving the feedback as well. So even if you're not doing a speech, you still got to be speaking, because you're going to be delivering feedback or
so for those again who want to look into Toastmasters,
I think it's just go to toastmasters.org.
Yeah, and just find it out. But like, you're always going to do something. If you're not doing speech, you're going to evaluate. If you're not evaluating, you're going to be a grammarian.
Timekeeper.
You're going to be timekeeper. You can do all those things, and you're always going to have a chance to get in front of people and just saying, oh, so we had speakers who spent this much of time on the stage, you know, someone went overtime, whatever. Grammarian, I like grammarians. They always would have to come up with a word of the day.
Yeah.
Oh God.
No, it was great. I mean, I actually probably want to get back into it, because I think what it helped me do a lot is each time you deliver a speech was to kind of work on like a 5 to 7 minute story. Yeah. And at the moment, because I do a lot of speaking, but I speak, as you know, mainly about health and well-being, and I've got like, you get into this kind of set pattern, set routine, and I need to develop more storytelling into my speeches and into my delivery of my talks. And I think Toastmasters really helps with thinking about, oh, you know, that time when I was, it gets you to think about stories and deliver them. So I actually do, when I get settled with where I'm going to be and stuff, like when I get back into to join.
I think one of the biggest minuses, so I will tell the reason why I stopped doing Toastmasters, so you can tell why you think maybe always not going to be pluses only. There's some things what you maybe were not very happy about Toastmasters. The main thing for me, the feedback would be always super positive. So even when I know as an advanced speaker, I would go and I know that I didn't perform very well, very rarely I would have an honest kind of a comment saying, Renars, you messed up on this, you messed up on that. Most of the time it's just going to be, well, Renars was just the best.
Well, they do this CRC, right? Isn't it? So commend, recommend, commend. Yeah. I've got actually on my website how to give feedback, and I got a slightly different one, which is good, go, great. So I would like give a bit of good feedback. Then GO, which is the go part, it stands for growth opportunities. So I'd say, so where I would say, I'm really, when I give feedback to the kids and I tell them how to give feedback, I'm really a bit anal about how I ask them to deliver it, because I do ask them to deliver even the growth opportunities in a positive framework. So rather than say, okay, Renars, you know, I liked your speech, great content, but, you know, you didn't speak loudly enough, so we couldn't hear you. I would say, rather than say it like that, I would say, you know, great speech, loved your content, and next time, to really engage the whole room, if you spoke up and really projected your voice, it would make it more impactful. And then I finish with something great. So good, go, great. And so you do want to, I always say you want about 80% of it to be positive. You want 20% of it to be the growth stuff. Because the thing is, if you kind of say 5-6 things that person could do better, they're never going to do it, right? You just want to say 1 or 2 things, but you also want to say it in a way that makes them want to do it, rather than, you know, okay, it's, you know, rubbish. Because all they'll come away with is that rubbish thing.
I totally agree, and to be honest, like, I can say this just because I was Toastmaster for like about 10 years, and I think I just wanted more challenge.
Yeah.
I wanted more challenge, and like stand up, that's what is when you get on the stage and you bomb and you're like, oh shit. Okay,
and a lot of the
I know
other
exactly what it
participants
is.
are quite new, so they feel intimidated to give their opinion about an accomplished speaker.
Yeah, but for those who would like to get into public speaking, it's definitely one beginning 100% for Toastmasters. It doesn't cost you much. It's like 70, 80 pounds a year or something.
Yeah, it wasn't
and then
much.
you meet the networking. Look at this, me and Harry. That's how we met.
Yeah.
And we stayed in contact and touch for many years.
Yeah.
Well,
one of my best friends at the moment, I don't know if you remember Joe Lake. He used to play tennis. I'm not sure if he was there when you were there or not, but he and I are really good friends now, and we hang out all the time, and he's through Toastmasters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had two favorite guys. They're both bold guys. We had one was Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn and Henry.
And Henry was my best. Like, he was always wearing these sexy scarves and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this is our first segment, and we're gonna be back in just a minute. What I want to ask you, how is it to deal with youngsters? What is the age you're dealing with, by the way?
Well, for that workshop, 14, 15.
Lift it up, just so it's not in your chest. No.
I like that. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for that age group, it's 14, 15, so year 10.
That's quite a tough age, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I like doing it is because I feel like if you've got them as an audience and you can hold them, all other audiences are going to be better.
Right.
I also do some work with like sort of the year 7s and 8s, which are also interesting, but not public speaking on something else. But yeah, anything, if you're presenting in front of kids, going into schools, that's the hardest. So that's kind of why I started it, because I thought, you know,
if you get those guys to listen to you, I can imagine it's very challenging. How do you relate to them? What are your ways?
Yeah, I think I do quite a good job because I'm quite youthful, even though I'm not that young anymore. But
by the way, so those who don't know, Harry is 44 years old.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, it's on your Instagram. It actually said 44.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did.
Look. I definitely need to discuss this
there we
photo.
Go.
It's so good.
Because basically, I'm Greek, and so what we say is when you're 43, you're 44 because you're in your 44th year.
My favorite photo is with the hat.
The hat. Oh yeah, that was when I was in Santorini when I was living in Crete actually, and I was going up a volcano. So, I mean, this picture needs context, really.
Oh my God, who's this guy?
Yeah, that was me at 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, this one is like, I don't care.
That was me, moody 16-year-old.
Wow. And that's the ones you're dealing with now.
Yeah, but the thing is, I can relate to them because I remember what it's like to be there, because I've kind of kept a semi-journal since I was 10. And so I've got kind of my thoughts on paper.
How do you start? A dear diary today?
No, not quite. But it's somewhat like. But I might write in it once or twice, and then not write in it for like 3 years or 4 years. But there was a lot of entries, you know, in that.
Do you have like a physical paper journal?
Yeah. Well, this is back in the 90s, right?
Oh, okay. So, floppy disk.
But I've got it. Like, I think the most recent time I wrote in it was probably about a year or two ago, and it's like 3 or 4 books now, but I've got lots of entries from 14, 15, 17, that kind of age range, so I know what it was like to be that age, and so I can relate to them quite a lot, and also I'm just honest with a lot of stuff, and
what is that? Do they have the name of the subject? Is it public speaking? Is it a subject? Is it something what they can choose, or they have to get the credits, or how does it work?
So it's so I work for this charity when I do this, and basically this really rich dude sponsors every school in London and Essex.
Does he has a name, that rich dude?
A guy called Jack Petchy. So
Jack Petchy, good job, man.
He's in his 90s, and he's born in the East End of London. I think he's worth like 900 million pounds, right? But so he sponsors a lot of events like drama, you know, arts, whatever.
That's awesome.
And one of them is public speaking. And so he gives the money to the charity, and we work for the charity. And yeah, so every school in London and Essex can get at least one workshop, and if they want more for their students, they do it at a really cheap rate. So it's very structured. We take them through a whole process, get their confidence up, and then they can choose any topic that they want, and they talk about it for 1 minute at the end of the day to their class of the other 30 kids or whatever. So
just 1 minute.
I normally get like a minute and a half. Yeah, but to be honest, like a lot of people will struggle for 30 seconds.
Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, eventually they get to 2 or 3 minutes if they get through the rounds, and then there's a big competition, and then there's like a final, and someone wins. But it's only like 3 minutes, I think, the final speech.
Does it sound for you weird sometimes to hear that people struggle with public speaking, knowing that you or... Well, I know for sure me, I never had to struggle with that. You can't shut me up. I was always the one who spoke in a class and without...
But most people aren't like that. Like that's
for me, it's so difficult sometimes to comprehend that we are just so different.
Yeah. I get it. I get it a lot because I see it a lot. And I've saw it a lot with Toastmasters, but even more so now with the public speaking thing, because... Yeah, most people struggle in that class.
And for teenagers, it's very severe. It's so different. They're going through so many things.
Now I think it's even worse because like I always say, like they got their heads buried, right? And adults as well a lot of the time, right? People don't look up. They don't look eye contact. Yeah. They don't know how to converse.
How often do you have kids staring at their phones, or there's a rule that you have to turn the phones off?
They don't usually have. Different schools have different policies, but almost I think every single school I've been in, they've never pulled out a phone in the workshop. Occasionally they might ask, like for the research. I normally say make up the research because you're not going to have time to research. I don't know how many kids die from road traffic accidents in a year, whatever. So whether it's 4,000, 40,000, 400,000, doesn't matter. Just say whatever you want to say. If you get through, then you can do the research. So they might ask, oh, can I get my phone out to do that? And I'll just say no, because I don't want them to waste time. Yeah. And B, I don't for sure know they're going to be using their phone to do that.
For that
and I
reason.
Don't want to kind of like do a whole domino effect and get other people with their phones.
I can relate a little bit to you. Obviously, I'm not in that level of done speeches in front of youngsters and teenagers. But back in Latvia, I have this tiny school where the town where I was raised. It's like 6,000 people town and like quite small school. And I have still a very good relationship with my English teacher. And every time I would go back to visit my mom, so I started, it was my initiative that I would like to, so when I went to Canada and then I came back, I just wanted to go to the school and talk to kids, saying no matter where you're from, you all have chances, travel the world and, see things like that. It was quite, like, I came from a point of view that when I was their age, I wish there would be someone and would talk to me about those things. Yeah. And funny enough, in about 6 years, that grew from one group of like small group of kids. I had like the full, like almost the entire school was gathered so that I would do the speech thing. Oh, cool. But what I struggled with, and that the initial idea was that I was speaking English, so that I would try to connect with people who think that English, they don't really need it, but it kind of inspired them. That's a language you need to study, because it was with my English teacher promoting that you need English language as a third language. In Latvia, that's a third language. Most of us, Latvian, Russian. Yeah. Most of the kids, maybe younger generation, not that much anymore. And I realized that so many people, so many of these young kids would be just staring at their phones, and I would be talking about things like what you're gonna do about your future, like career-wise. And I still remember this one girl. So there were these kind of years just before they're graduating, and I remember I would ask, like, what are you going to do? What is your choice? And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a biologist. I'm going to study in this university. Good, because you like biology and you love studying about animals and plants. And they're like, yeah. And then this one girl was like, so what are you going to study? And she's like, I'm going to study psychology. I was like, oh, you love talking to people, you're a good listener. And she's like, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, but that's what psychologists do. And she's like, oh, no, I'm just moving there because my boyfriend lives in that town. And I was like, wow. And I would see, like, she's staring at her phone and the topless boyfriend is on the screenshot or whatever. And I'm like, and that was my challenge, to get to those kids and say, listen, like, there's more in this life than just a boyfriend, and you're gonna probably, how they make those decisions about going somewhere and then kind of wasting their time and lives.
It's hard. I mean, I think all you can do is share your experiences a lot of the time and hope, because one of the phrases I love is the original was a man, but let's rephrase it to a person. So a person convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. Right, so a man convinced against their will is of the same opinion still. So if you force someone to have an opinion, right, they might agree with you just to get you off your back, but it's
not their opinion,
and they still think the same, right? Yeah. And so, and this can go for so many things, like where
Right.
we're in right now in the world. But when it comes to that, you know, at the end of the day, you can't control what anyone does, right? You can only control two things in life, right? That's your attitude and your actions. And you might think, especially if you're a parent, oh, you can control your kids. You can't control your kids, right? You think
you can guide them, you can point them the direction.
Because ultimately the decisions are going to be theirs to make, right? And this is what we're seeing here, is that, you know, no one is technically forcing us to do the things that we've had to do in the last 18 months, but, you know, now through methods of whatever, they're kind of getting us to do it, but we're doing it. We're making those decisions, really, because you can't really get anyone to do anything, right? You can influence, you can persuade, now you can coerce and blackmail, it seems, but but you can't, like, ultimately people have to do it unless you're literally held down at gunpoint or whatever. So the point I'm trying to make is that, like, with the kids, they're gonna work things out for themselves, right? You've got to try and teach them in different ways, because people are going to learn differently, so that they can then think, oh, you know, okay, this is useful, you know. And I normally say to people, look, I know most of you aren't going to want to be public speakers, but it's not about public speaking. One, it's about confidence, but two, it's also if those people that can speak well in public, on average, are going to earn about 70% more income than the person doing the same job next to you.
Really?
Well, if you think about it, it doesn't matter. Like I always say, look, let's say you go to a hairdresser's or a barber's, and one is, you know, really good at communicating and public speaking.
Yeah.
The other's not, right? Now, often in a barber's, they often hire the chair and they have to, you know, pay. But if you're really good with your customer, you're going to understand what they want. You're going to communicate the kind of haircut. And I normally say to people, hands up if you've ever gone to a barber's or a hairdresser's and you've told them what you want and you've come out and it doesn't look anything like what you wanted. Did you go back to that barber's or hairdresser's? Did you recommend that person?
That's a good point. I love that.
Yeah. And then if they're really good, they might recommend, like, the products, right? You might get a tip. You might be able to sell them shampoos or hair gels or whatever. And so you want that, because then you're going to earn more money. So, you know, if you're any job, if you're a doctor and you can communicate well, you'll probably get invited to speak at conferences and, you know, things like that, right? A friend of mine who's kind of the co-author of my second book, he works in health and safety, but he's like really good communicators. He's like the MC and the chairman of various conferences. So then he's on stage. So then he can command a lot for his fees when he goes in to talk about health and safety. You know, so it doesn't matter what you want to do in life. You're going to earn more money if you can communicate well. If you just hide behind your computer and computer games and scream, right, you might be the best accountant in the world, but no one's going to really know about it, or you're not going to be able to communicate the best accounting ideas to people. And then if they don't understand it, they'll just bugger off and go to another.
So basically there's a lot of advantages. There's a lot of good things in communicating about with anyone, with your family members, with your kids, with your spouses, so communication goes very far. 100%. And someone who considers to be in sales. Yeah. So we were talking about public speaking and everything. And now I want to talk about, when did you actually started having this as your business as a public speaker? So this is video. Is this the, like, up to date?
Yeah, this is a mix.
It's like a compilation.
Yeah, it's a compilation video.
It starts very loud with the crazy music.
This is the music that I used to come on stage. This is actually the Yes group that I'm speaking at.
Oh, right. Everyone is clapping.
I think this was this was at an event.
You guys are up for having a fantastic day, say yes, but I already know you are, but let's just warm up the vocal cords as well. So are you guys up for having a fantastic day today? Say yes. Yes.
My name's Harry Kalymnios, and I help people just like you become superhuman.
And I believe that there's a superhero.
Look at you. I love those shirts you have.
I mean,
Yeah, they're
imagine the
nice.
best
I
you've
like.
ever
I've
felt.
got about 6 or 7 of
then
them.
kind of 10x that.
Because I believe, like I said, that
I
there's
get them
some
from a place in Barcelona,
superpower within
actually.
each
Oh, there you go.
and every one of us, and that sometimes we just need
It's
to
back when I had a bit of
unlock
facial
that.
hair, a bit more
And
facial
the
hair.
leader of today, I think, needs to transform.
People think of leadership.
TEDx. Tell me about TEDx. How many TEDx speeches have you done?
That was the one, the early one, and it's interesting. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, how did you get a TEDx speech?" And I'm like, pretty simple, really. I went onto the TED website. I looked up all the TEDx's in the UK. I looked up ones that were in the next 6 months or next year that I could potentially travel to. I wrote to about 25 of them.
Oh, wow.
I got maybe like hardly any responses.
Were they the same? All the 25 were the same letters, just copy paste. You didn't. It wasn't like you.
No, they'd be slightly different because they would have a different theme.
Oh, different themes.
To the
Oh,
thing.
right.
So I'd, and then you have to, in some, like this one, for example, actually was a bit funny because this one wanted me to write the speech out as part of the application, and I don't normally write entire speeches. Yeah.
Like literally give you, it's like if you're a stand-up comedian, they want to see all your jokes.
Yeah, the whole script. And I was like,
Wow.
okay, so I did a thing, and their theme was serendipity, actually.
Oh, right.
And so the whole thing was about, so I was talking about really how I got into this world of talking and health and fitness and everything and well-being, and how the whole speech was about, I went to this NLP course, a free NLP day, and I was debating whether I paid the £4,000 to do the NLP course. And then there was a few things that like transpired. One, they showed like and we talked about what my favourite movie was when you texted me, but they showed the clip.
Yeah, it was Rocky.
Yeah, so they showed a clip from, I think it was Rocky Balboa, where he's talking to his son, and he's going,
It's not about how you get hit,
yeah.
it's about how you
So I
get
think they showed that, and then they also show, and I was like, okay, so, and obviously Rocky being so influential for me as a kid, I was like, okay, right, so that's veering me to. And then the other thing that swayed me is that in 2010, which is when this was, I was going to cycle from London to Paris with a bunch of people I didn't know, but
right.
just, this is a whole other story that's gone on for 10 years now. But anyway, I was going to do it for a charity, and then I didn't know who I could raise money for. And we were going to arrive in Paris, I think on the 20th or 21st of September. And he showed on the NLP course a video about this charity called Peace One Day, and a guy called Jeremy Gilly, I think his name was, who started this charity. And he basically wanted like all these different countries that may be war in and stuff to have one dedicated day of peace, where there's an amnesty for a day so you can get medicines through and whatever else. And I think that was going to be the 20th or 21st of September each year. I think it's the same each year. So I was like, oh, that works out perfectly because I'm going to arrive in Paris that day. I can raise money for the Peace One Day charity. And so all of this was like, led me to the NLP. And then the NLP, so I decided to do the NLP course. Then going on the NLP course, I met someone at the Yes Group. And then I started to join the Yes Group. That then led me to an event by Joseph McClendon, who is Tony Robbins' head trainer. That led me down to a book. That led me down to the health and fitness world. That led me to another event, which is where I met my then girlfriend, who was quite influential on me. And so it was all about that. And then at the end of that speech, I talk about the framework I have for healthy living. But then they wanted actually the whole speech to be about that. So that's what that speech ends up being about. And it wasn't about the path getting to there. But that was the whole serendipity bit. It's like, because I can trace back now, like 10, 12 years, like I said, the book led to these things, led to this, led to that. And I can kind of see those things.
It's quite journey, clearly. And you can kind of see it where it
very
started.
Clearly, yeah, very clearly, yeah.
That's really cool.
Okay,
so going back to TEDx, for those who don't know what TEDx is, like I would, if you Google just like certain subjects, what is this, what is that, very often it's going to go to YouTube and TEDx, so they explain certain things. So you said this, I didn't really know that there's themes for TEDx.
A lot of the time,
they call them TEDx days, or how would they event?
So TEDx is different. It's like, think of it like TED. There's an event called TED. Right, which is, I think TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, Design, which has been around for a long, long time, but they started putting their videos on YouTube back in 2006 or 7.
Right, where they would be talking about technology and development.
Well, it's lots of things now, right? There's
now it's but originally
back
started
then
with that.
Well, I don't know really what, but anyway, so these events, like the actual TED happens once a year. Then I think there's a TED Global and a TED Medical or something like that. But anyway, it costs like £4,000 to attend as a participant, and there's usually like high level, like people at the top of their game speak at these TED events. Anyway, they have these things called TEDx's, which are independently organised but affiliated to TED. So they can use the branding. There's very specific rules about how you go about it, but there's not the same oversight, as it were, from the original TED. But then you do the speech, and as long as it meets the guidelines, it goes onto their TEDx YouTube channel. And if it blows up there, then it might go onto the main TED channel or the main TED website.
Oh, okay.
So TEDx is independently organized, but it still follows that same thing, and you get a lot of, like, for example, a lot of people have seen Simon Sinek start with why. He's a kind of massive sensation when it comes to like leadership, but his first speech was on a TEDx stage, right? So you know, I'm still waiting for my one to hit millions of views so I can get invited. So go watch it. You know,
I'm not sure that this podcast is going to help you to get millions of views.
You never know, right?
You never know.
You never know. I always say it doesn't matter how many people watch or listen to it, because it could be that only 5 people listen or watch your video, but if one of those people ends up being Oprah Winfrey,
exactly,
then you know, or maybe Joe Rogan.
But at the same time, like for me as well, like doing this podcast is not about, you know, even if it can change someone's opinion, 1 person, 2 people,
it's worth
it doesn't
it.
matter. It's worth it.
It's worth it. And that's what I say with my YouTube. I've been doing YouTube videos for like 10 years now, and you know, I'm always getting messages from people saying, you know, even the other day, someone was like, "Oh, I love that yoga mat. Well, can I buy it, or buy this rebounder or whatever?" And yeah, it's inspirational. I think when you hear from these people that you know, you're changing, even though you might only have like 50 views or 100 views or whatever. So
100%. Okay, Ted, this speech, how long ago was it?
I did that in 2016.
Notion, something that only the few attain. Top CEOs, Premiership football coaches, military generals.
My philosophy is this.
Okay, so that was the only excerpt you had from there?
No, it kind of cuts in and out.
Yeah.
So this one here was at an HR conference that I was doing.
If you want to lead other people,
but it's all the same speech.
The first person you have to lead is yourself.
Well, it's all different speeches, but it's all about the same idea, which is, you know, the overarching health philosophy that I developed. Yeah.
And then do you think it would be a good idea now to talk about your book? It kind of leads to that?
Well, yeah, I mean,
TheThoughtGym.
TheThoughtGym is my first book.
Yeah.
And so actually, again, it kind of comes back to this idea where I said...
$7.99 on eBay?
Oh, wow. God, on eBay, right. Oh, it should be about £15 on Amazon.
On Amazon, right.
So there we go. But if you can get it for $7.99, I don't know, because I think Amazon
You
take
gave
a lot.
me that book originally. I think
did I?
whether you gave me or you gave me the link where I could download it for free, because I read it.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because I read it. Like I remember I just was rereading the summary. I think on Amazon. And I was like, yeah, I remember like one of the biggest things I remember, which I'm being horrible with, when you eat, you concentrate on eating, or like you don't watch a TV, you don't do, which I always, since I was a kid, my family was the worst. Like my dad would be sitting in the living room watching TV and then stuffing his face. And I remember when that concept came from your book, and I was like, really? Oh, is that how you have to live? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not how you have to live,
No,
but it's an option, and it's really hard when you're single, I think, and because you want to be distracted sometimes when you're watching things.
I always watch something or listening something.
So this book came about really because, a bit like the Toastmasters thing, I went and I saw this guy on stage, and he said, look, if you want to be a coach, right, you know, speak on stage because you get more people. Have a book because you'll add credibility, you get to kind of share your ideas, you get to have people learn from you without you having to physically be there. And then I'd learned a lot of things from NLP. So this book was all, the idea behind this book, because I knew I wanted to do about health and fitness, is that a lot of people, when they try and get fit or healthy, right, you know, 1st of January, right, I'm going to do this, and then by like the 10th of January, it's game over, they've kind of quit. And the reason is, most people are always trying to address a behavior that they're doing, like the smoking, the drinking, whatever it is, without trying to first address the mindset that drives the behavior.
Right.
So that's why they go in these repetitive patterns over and over. So
they don't go to the cause, which is
no, exactly. So they're not, you know, this is the world all over, to be honest. But we want quick fixes. We kind of we don't really understand the root of the problem. We try and solve it.
Yeah, when they want to cut the corners.
Yeah,
well, that's
exactly.
a typical.
So this book was really takes you through different chapters, which is like, firstly, have a big enough why. So it goes through an exercise telling you, you know, let's say you say, oh, you know, I want to get into shape. It's like, okay, why? Oh, well, because society's telling me. Well, that's not going to be a compelling reason, right?
No.
That's not going to get you out of bed at 4, 5 or 6 in the morning on a dark October night to go for a run or whatever it is. So firstly, you got to create that incentive in that person as to why is it so important, right? Like my dad didn't give up cigarettes when he, ironically enough, when he almost burnt us down in the house, which is interesting. But he did end up giving up cigarettes when he ended up having a triple heart bypass without any resistance to it, because it was important enough for him.
Whether you're going to die or you live. Yeah.
You know, so it goes through that. It talks about things like values and beliefs. So like, for example, if you believe, which many people believe, let's say healthy eating is boring or tasteless or time consuming or expensive, if that's a fundamental belief you have, no matter with all your will in the world, and willpower doesn't last, but if you know, you're not going to really do it. Or if you feel like you're missing out, if you believe you will be missing out by eating healthily or, you know, whatever, you're not going to do it. If you believe that smoking on some fundamental level, really unconscious level, is cool, right? Because let's say, like, when you were at school, it certainly was with me, all the cool kids used to hang out by the shops having a cigarette, pictures of James Dean, Marlon Brando, you know.
For me, I was working as a DJ, and my older guy, who was the main DJ guy at the beginning, he would always smoke, and I just thought, this is cool. This is what cool
it just
kids
looks
do.
cool, right? You look at that picture of James Dean with his cigarette, you know, the famous one with his cigarette. I often think they should do a marketing campaign and just have like an asparagus, like, you know, use Photoshop and put an asparagus instead of the cigarette to kind of get or a carrot to get vegetables.
Yeah, because I was also thinking about idea. Can you imagine, instead of cigarettes, we would have like these little carrots? You go outside and you have a little carrot each and you just eat it. But then you'll be like, why would we go outside? So then you lose that social thing what people have, and and there's so much like just the socializing concept of it. You know, who are the smokers? They go outside, they have a little chat behind bosses' backs, and they have this camaraderie.
Well, this is the thing, is like, did you ever used to watch Friends?
Yeah, dude, I'm still...
Yeah, so you'll probably remember the episode where Jennifer Aniston takes up smoking because she wants to get in with the business.
Exactly.
And the same thing happens with me at the stock exchange, right? Like, the people that used to smoke used to get the better projects and things like that, because there would be that connection. And I do say to people, look, firstly, you shouldn't have just the smokers having those breaks, right? You should go out for your 2-minute air break. Yeah. And just, you know, when people are smoking, they go, oh, it relaxes me. Well, what are they doing when they're doing that? They're going, and they're taking a...
If they would do it without smoke...
But if they do it without the smoke, right, or take one of those old biro pens and have the pen out of it and just pretend you're, like, you know, pulling in air, you know, you're getting the same sort of benefit, right? Because it's not the smoking necessarily for a lot of people. And so the idea is, so if you have that as a belief, right, you're not going to get ahead in work if you don't smoke, then you're not going to really change. If things like you value in life are more important, like I don't know, let's say, well, for example, what people value now is a lot of the time other people's opinions. So we're not going to go too far down the rabbit hole of what's going on with the current health epidemic, but the way they're trying to encourage people to do what they want them to do is almost through social pressure, shaming, whatever it is, because we value our friends' opinions, we value our family's thoughts, right? We don't want to be ostracized from society, so we want to
be part of a tribe.
Part of a tribe,
tribal.
Right? So if you value that over and above, say, your own intuition or your own health or whatever it is, whatever your belief is, then you're not going to change, right? So if you value going to, like, all your friends are pub drinkers and you value their friendships, but you might also value your health, but you value their friendships more than your health, you're probably going to still go to the pub. You might probably still drink and stuff like that. So, your values are really important. Your beliefs are really important. But the other thing it talks about in the book is your identity. So who you see yourself as a person. So if you see yourself as someone that is a person that used to smoke, then there's always going to be that kind of pull back towards it. Whereas my dad, for example, he doesn't consider himself like that. He's just like a non-smoker, right? So there's never that like or ex-drinker or ex-smoker or whatever. If you see yourself as someone that is always not quite going to make the mark, then if that's how you identify yourself, then you'll probably never just quite make the mark. Yeah. So, you know, if you see yourself as being like a beacon of light for the world or a healthy example for other people, then it doesn't matter how drunk you get or whatever, you're probably never going to smoke, or you're probably never going to do, you know, because that's not in line with your identity as a person. So in the book, it goes through all of those ideas and using some techniques from NLP to help make changes. Because the idea is, first, it says on the book there, train the mind and the body will follow. If you train the mind, then the body will follow, or train the mind and the rest will follow. And once you do that, so that was the purpose of the first book, is to kind of highlight some of these ideas that I learned from NLP, from other areas, and using those to help people to make changes so that they can actually make the actual downstream changes that they wanted, rather than every year you go through the same patterns over and over.
How long it's been now since it's been released?
That was, I mean, I'm not great with promotions. That was 2013, so I don't do a great job with promoting it, unfortunately. But
and since then, how many kind of people got out and got in touch with you and saying, like, giving you a feedback? And
I mean, I've often got people, like, sometimes years later, a bit like you, saying, oh, you know, I read that and that really resonated with me, and so you get the occasional, but I'm not like some best-selling author where it sold millions of copies.
But
so,
listen, it's such an achievement to release a book.
Well, yeah, know? I mean, that was a big achievement, and I actually wrote that book. I mean, I wrote that book in, well, it took 6 months, but it was like 4 or 5 months of planning, and then 4 or 5 months of editing and rewriting. I say writing a book's easy. It's the rewriting and the publishing and the editing and all that is hard. But actually, the bulk of that book was almost like a cosmic download in about 2 weeks.
Right.
Where I wrote the majority. But I did all the planning, so I knew what was going to happen for about 3 or 4 months, and then I did all the editing for another 4 or 5 months. But the actual bulk of the pen to paper, as it were, was in 2 weeks. Unbelievably.
Before we go to the next segment, can we talk about the second book you were co-writing? You were the co-creator.
Yeah.
What is the title of it?
It's not going to be on Amazon. So if you go to my website.
To you. Okay, here we go. After hours and hours of searching, we finally found it. Working Well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, this book I wrote with Professor Andrew Sharman, who I actually saw speaking at a wellbeing event, and I went up to him and chatted to him, and then, you know, we had similar views on the things. Here's the guy actually who's quite big in the health and safety world, but, you know, a lot of the health and safety world is more safety rather than health and well-being, as it were. So, so it worked quite well. And what I like about this book, or what I resisted originally, because I was like, oh, it's going to be a super thin book, and actually a lot of people love this book because it's way smaller than even the TheThoughtGym. It's only 112 pages, and it's got nice graphics inside, very kind of pop culture kind of references, and it's based on a simple framework, and you know, can literally fit in your back pocket. So a lot of people love this book, which is going to be in stark contrast to the third book that I'm writing, which I've been writing for about I've been writing it for about 6 years.
And it's just going to be you?
Yeah, just me, but it's my whole health philosophy. So it's going to be very big. It's going to be almost like Tools of Titans kind of size book, like from Tim Ferriss, or 4-Hour Workweek. It's going to be quite big. So I know not a lot of people will read it, but I wanted a book that is going to be almost everything I know, that if I got hit by a bus, at least someone has got one reference Bible that can tell them pretty much everything they need to know about health and well-being in a really simple framework. But this is effectively taking a few concepts from my overarching philosophy and then distilling it down into really accessible form for the average person to read. And so, yeah, so I'm actually really proud of that book. It's a really
awesome. When was that released?
That was in 2018. Yeah,
oh,
so it's still not on Amazon for some reason, I think. Yeah, and then the last one is a journal that I've put together, which is like a day planner. Superjournal.com. You can get that, and it's almost like it's my day-to-day planner. Really, it's got like my goals in, it's got my daily schedule in, you know, and I like it pen on paper. I don't want everyone's going, oh, can you not digitalize this? I'm like, no, because you missed the point of why I've done it in the first place. But
yeah, there's some kind of a beauty about pen and paper.
Yeah,
I don't know
for so many reasons.
It's just that our generation understands that.
Yeah, I think so, because a lot of people are like, you know, I get the idea, because I use my phone for like Evernote and Google Keep and all these notes and stuff, and it can be really useful. The challenge is, if you're going for something on your phone, there's lots of other distractions. You're also not going to have everything in one page. Whereas when I've got the journal, I can pop that up against my computer. I can focus on what I want to do. I can see everything laid out, and I'm not going to get distracted by a phone or messages or you know, whatever else.
Have you ever had this I'm so used to reading Kindle or whatever that you open a normal book and you don't see it very well and you put your fingers on and you do this?
I haven't, luckily. I've not got that bad, but I do know generations where they're kind of used to swiping with the pictures. And one of my friends, her niece was like, seeing a picture on a mug, and she was trying to swipe the picture to kind of get to the next picture, and you just think that is.
Was it swipe left because she didn't like it?
Well, I think I don't think she was old enough to know about those kind of dating apps.
Oh god! But it is crazy how it's changed. And it's like I'm not a big fan of writing stuff down on my phone, but I love writing on my laptop. Like I love this very tiny laptop, and I take it pretty much anywhere, and I write actually faster than I write with my hand. And also the biggest thing about writing with my hand, if I have a mistake, I want to get rid of it, I just need to scratch it here. In laptop I can just delete it,
At the end of the day, right, different tools are going to be used for different things. I think from my journal perspective, I like to have the physical thing, and then you can also keep them as a record and everything else. So for me it works, and when I don't use it, my days can get away from me quite easily compared to if I do have it. So that's the journal. But yeah, the other book is going to be like 100. It's already 120,000 words.
Wow.
And if you think about, the first book was 30,000 words, which was about 200 and something pages, I think. The second book was only 15,000 words, and this is going to be at the moment it's sitting at 120,000 words, and I still got to do all the references. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be... and I will probably, if I can, at some point, break it up into 12 smaller volumes. That was an idea someone gave me, and have it a bit like the Working Well book, and have it almost like a box set, so you can kind of pick and choose the bits you want to read. But in the first instance, I just want to get it out as one singular volume. Just because it's been there for like 6 years. I've been writing it, and even before I started writing Working Well, I was writing it. And I managed to write Working Well with my co-author in a few months. But this one, for one reason or another, is taking a bit longer. But that's the book that's going to have my philosophy in. And that's the book I'm going to be probably most proud of.
And it sounds like you're looking forward by being hit by the bus.
Well, I remember reading the 4-Hour Work Week, and Tim Ferriss saying, my editor said it has to be shorter, it has to be this, and he's like, well, I don't want to leave anything on the table. A lot of people hold things back for future books, but the reality is, I've probably got right now I've got like 20 books in me, in addition to the one I'm writing. So I'm not like short of ideas. I've got tons of ideas for entire books. Like a lot of the blogs that I've written could be entire books. So I'm not like, I'm going to hold it back because what if I don't have anything to write about in the future? No, because I know I will. If I want to write more books, I've got tons of books.
The main reason why I was giggling about the hitting by the bus is because one of the films you suggested, which you really like.
Oh yeah.
Because I asked Harry 2 books, 2 films, and 2 most kind of inspiring people in your life.
Yeah.
And one of the films, it wasn't one of your 2 ones. First one was Rocky, and the second one was it Superman. What was the second one?
Probably.
Yeah, and the third one was Yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious because I actually worked on it.
What did you do on that?
The thing is, I'm not even in the credits. I was hired by the stunt coordinator just to help setting up the rig, what they used for the guy who's getting hit by the bus.
Oh, right.
That was way more visual. The whole thing was, we set up this huge wire rig that the guy would be pulled with all the bicycle and the bus and everything, and then they end up editing that out, as it happens very often. But yeah, I was in that film, and I remember it was such a huge secret, and like there's, and then right when we finished it, the guy was like, this is actually a guy getting hit by the bus, and he is the only one who remembers Beatles. And I'm like, that sounds like shit.
It's so
but
good.
Then when film came out, honestly, and when you said like, I like to rewatch it once in a while, I rewatched it about 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And just put it on, and I was like, I love that. I probably, that idea of you come up with something that people just in shock.
Yeah.
That shock value. Just like the Spider-Man turns into Spider-Man, and it's like it's a shock that he can move that way and do these things, and everyone's like, wow. And the shock when he played Yesterday in front of a bunch of these friends, and everyone's like, oh my God, what is this? And the guy's like, what do you mean, what is this?
He goes like, stop taking the piss or whatever.
Yeah.
Very fun. And then it's very I think I've watched it about 3 times, and it's one that, like, obviously it helps if you like the Beatles music as well, but it's got that rewatchability factor. It's just a feel-good movie, which I quite
spoiler alert, by the way, for anyone who haven't seen it, but it's been out for a while now.
It's been out for about
and
2-3 years.
Yeah, and it's so good. And I found it very funny that he looked up Oasis, and Oasis wasn't there either, but he's like, He even
Makes
said
sense.
something. He said,
makes sense, doesn't he?
no. He said something else. I forgot now. It wasn't make sense. Something matters or something he said. Anyways, he didn't try to remember the Oasis songs. You know, he went only for Beatles.
That's true, yeah.
Because why wouldn't he use Wonderwall or, other songs?
Yeah, that's funny.
Oh, he said, I think it figures something.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah, figures,
and it was just very
because
interesting.
obviously that they had massive influence, right, from the Beatles. That's what they always said anyway, and it was sort of like they were the kind of the
and then the
90s version.
Coca-Cola wasn't invented either.
That I didn't quite understand, but that was there, and then Harry Potter at the end.
Yeah.
So
anyway, so that's we kind of creeping into films. Yesterday, what about Rocky? I mean, obviously the idea about the underdog and that I think that resonated to so many people over the world.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was that. My first actually Rocky movie was Rocky 2 anyway, so it was less the underdog side of things, although it kind of still was. But it was more like, I just remember I must have been, I don't know, like 8, 9, 10, that kind of age range, maybe a bit older. But it got me into like exercising and work. I mean, I was always quite into exercising from the age of 8 at least, that I was quite active, and then certainly by the time I got to 12, I mean, as a kid I did things like judo when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. I did a bit of karate when I was like 12, and when I was part of the Scouts, I remember doing like a badge, and I was doing like push-ups for that badge or something like that. So I was always quite active, like football, basketball, but I remember just like loving that movie, and then kind of going up into the bedroom and kind of doing some weights and stuff, so I think that was, and also I love which I found out years later, the story of how Rocky got made.
Oh, it was insane. Incredible story.
Which is a great story. But I only found that out maybe 10 years ago.
Just a sheer will of power, and it's just like, we're going to give you, was it almost like $25,000?
No,
so just
more than that. In the end, he was offered 300 and something thousand.
Oh my God. Yeah.
In 1976. So it was quite a lot of money.
And he was, I even gonna sell my dog just to.
So then they gave him like 25,000.
Yeah, it was 25 grand.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So
that story about Rocky. Now, since we were talking a lot about books, there were 2 books. There were more books. You were sending me. It was like, oh my God.
The thing is, in the last 10 years, I was reading on average a book a week for about 3 years, like from 2000. Thank you. From about 2000, because after university, I basically stopped learning or reading. I was like, I'm done, right? I worked really hard. I did really well in my GCSEs, really well in my A-levels, really well in my degree.
And then you're like, I'm done.
And I'm done. And I went traveling. I'm like, I read a few books when I was traveling, but then I didn't really read it throughout my 20s, like really. And then I started to read again when I got into this whole world.
Yeah.
And was reading on average a book a week because I was traveling to work and stuff. So like 50 books a year for the first sort of 3-4 years. And so some of the books may have come out of that. But now I read a lot less because I'm not traveling as much and I'm not as militant with my knowledge, but I do a lot more podcasts.
How do you read usually? Do you listen audiobooks or do you read physically?
Often physically. So when I was going to work, I had a 9-minute commute on the train.
Oh, okay.
But the whole commute was 30 minutes. So when I was walking to and from the station and doing the escalators, I would have an audio book.
Which is perfect.
And then when I was on the tube, I'd have the Kindle. And I found the Kindle much easier because it's a lot easier to slip in and out of the pocket, get to the pace, rather than a physical book.
Oh, yeah. Me, Kindle, the same thing. Yeah. And you also, for me, someone whose English is third language, I would always, it's so easy to mark the words or to look them up. Yeah. And then afterwards, you're done with the book, you have the list of the words you were looking up and you can...
But some books I will buy physically, especially if I want them later for reference or if I plan to read them at home. Some books I buy both physical and audio, like I did that with Ben Greenfield's book Boundless. I did the audio version, which was 24 hours long, but I wanted the book as well. The book I'm reading at the moment is on the Kindle, but I've got other books coming which are physical, so a whole mix. And I'm listening to actually a good book you might quite like, The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin.
So rings the bell.
So he's a friend of Tim Ferriss's, and he's the subject matter of this movie called Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Right.
And he was like a chess prodigy. But then he left that, and then he became like some Tai Chi push hands champion and a Brazilian black belt jiu-jitsu, and it's all about his way of learning. So, but yeah, so the 2 books that I suggest, what were the 2 books? One was Warrior Pose. What was the other one that
The Greatest Salesman.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's it. The Greatest Salesman in the World, which is actually a book I rarely recommend to people, but it has probably been one of the most transformational books.
So Greatest Salesman, I got it on audiobook straight away. So I listened it 3 times.
Okay, so you're doing...
So I was prepping for this, obviously, so we can talk about it. But the Warrior Pause, I got to 40%. I was reading on my Kindle. I got to 40% and I just didn't have time to read it. But it's so good. I love it. I got to the point where, spoiler alert for those who haven't read it, but when he actually got his surgery and he's back to Hong Kong.
Right.
So the story is about, well, how about you? Just give a breakdown.
So Warrior Pose, ironically enough, actually, I've got it in my bag in the car because I lent it to my brother-in-law and he's had it in Brighton for like 2 years. So it's a true story about a guy who used to work for either NBC or CNN or some kind of news...
Huge one, like the
big
biggest
channel,
one.
yeah. And he was in the first Gulf War in the 90s doing stuff. And anyway, long story short, he ends up with throat cancer. He also breaks his back whilst trying to hang curtains or something.
So he broke his back first, and that cancer came later.
Okay, yeah.
So he broke his back because...
But then he got addicted to painkillers.
It was a storm, and there was a little window open, and he reached for it and just very stupidly.
And by breaking the back, you break the bone in the back and not the connection, so he could like technically still walk around and stuff.
Yeah.
But then create lots of pain, and then he developed throat cancer and... It ended up becoming addicted to drugs and like prescription drugs. That is,
here's the book.
Painkillers. Yeah,
that's the one.
That's the title. Yeah, and ended up having an intervention going. And even though I'm explaining this, it's not really like spoiling the story so much because it's just such a readable book.
It's really good.
It's so addictive, and
because I struggle to read after hours. I usually actually read to make me sleep I fall asleep much easier. But like yesterday, I was still 2 o'clock and I was just still reading.
Yeah, I found that I read it in like 2 or 3 days, and I would read
really
that
good.
rather than watch TV, which for me means. So this was one of my 6 unputdownable books, which I did a podcast on, which is
before you go into like the main essence and like what I want you instead of like telling about the book, just tell like what kind of resonate to you. But before we get in there, like, so the first 30%, 40% of the book is about him going from these really rough, crazy areas, war zones, and like from Kazakhstan and all these like. And then some of the stuff what he's seen, and they are very graphic about like telling. And one of the craziest one was when he realized he sees on the ground a caterpillar, and he wants to pick it up, and he picks it up. It's a person's lip with a moustache on it.
Oh God.
And I was like...
I can't even remember that bit.
Yeah, well, I just freshly read. And then the other one was crazy when in this refugee camp, there's this woman with a dead child in her hands. She's walking around like with this glossy face, and she's just like all malnourished and all that kind of stuff. It's like some of them, and they just explain it so vividly. Then the last one was about Thailand, about the sex trafficking and how like 10 years old girls are like being
crazy.
It's insane. And from very beginning, and also the story how he got into being a news reporter was insane.
Oh yeah,
he just randomly got into this place, and there's like, are you here for interview?
Some random like out the way.
Insane. And he was like, I'm gonna go tomorrow to Canada, and all of a sudden he's already there.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. So that's and it's just very.
It's such a great book. I mean, for me, I think what is it? It's really shown because I've been into yoga since about 2008. Well, 2006. The reason I got into yoga actually, incidentally, is because when I worked at the stock exchange, I used to work night shifts, and after night shifts, I would go to the gym, and then I remember one time I would be on the treadmill, and I almost like fell asleep or collapsed on the treadmill, and I was like, I've got to do something other than the gym workout when I finish class. Because I wasn't at that point going straight to bed. I experimented with different shift patterns. So then there was a yoga class at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I started originally getting into yoga that way, but then it was only when I went to Thailand, did a bit of yoga there, then eventually found a decent teacher in London at a gym, and we did like twice a week, 90 minutes. I got really into it. And part of the reason that I was dedicated to getting into it is because I had this neck injury, which still persists a little bit to this day, but you know, it's a compressed disc or something in the neck, and they were like, well, it could be cortisol, could be surgery, could be physio. And so I started doing the physio, and then that 10 session block finished, and I was like, I've got to continue to do something. And so then I was like dedicated every Tuesday and Thursday. I'd leave work at 5:30, 5:35 latest to get to the 6 o'clock class. And again, this comes back to the whole book, TheThoughtGym, where you're talking about identities and values and beliefs and all of that.
Right.
I was like, I don't care that I might be seen to be leaving work early at 5:30, which is the time that I'm supposed to leave work, right? And people are staying till 6 or 10 past 6 or whatever. I'm like, this is more important, right?
Yeah.
I know that when I'm 80 or 60 or 70 or 80, whatever, I don't want to be hunched over. I don't want to be all of this when I look at people on the street. So I was like, this is important to me. So that got me started on yoga. And so why I like this book is because and I normally recommend this to people who are kind of new to yoga, thinking about yoga, thinking, is it really for them? You know, or like in my brother-in-law's case, is like quite injured, to give them inspiration about what's possible from this, you know.
And did you read this book after you already done yoga?
Yeah. I only read this like, I think I must have read this about 6 years ago.
Oh, okay. And you've been doing yoga now for how long?
I would say I seriously started doing yoga in 2008, so 13 years.
13 years.
But I started like before that, but really like a regular practice.
Yeah. And since we start talking about this subject, please tell me now the journey you have now. So you teach as well. How long you been teaching yoga?
I've been teaching for about 6 years. So I got my qualification, or my certification, I should say. There's always a difference between certification and qualification.
What is the difference?
I did a video on it. Certification, in my mind, is like you get your certificate, right? You do a course. Here you go. You can now teach it. Qualified means, do I feel qualified to actually teach yoga, right? And I might, and like some people, they get certified after certification after, and they still don't feel because they don't feel confident enough, whatever. So for me, what qualifies me to say speak on stage about health and well-being is not because now I have a master's in health and well-being, which I do have. That just certifies me I've got a master's certificate, a master's degree. What qualifies me is, you know, my experience, the hundreds or thousands of books, the thousands of hours, the 2-3 books I've written, you know, the results of my clients. That qualifies me to talk about what I'm talking about, right? A certification is just a certificate, right? So, but I got my certification in 2015. Just because I wasn't going to teach, but I just thought, you know, deeper my practice is the cliche, just to learn a little bit more. So I'd been doing yoga for about 7 years before I did my certification. A lot of people, they do yoga for like 6 months and they go, oh, I want to do my teacher training. I'm like, I don't know if that's correct.
And is there a specific type of yoga you're doing as well?
Well, what I was qualified, what I got certified in was this thing called Budokon, which is like a fusion of vinyasa flow, which is like a flowing form of yoga, animal moves, martial art influences. It's really quite cool.
Animal moves are very, very trendy and popular.
Well, yeah, my teacher would not like that statement because he was doing it like 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, but obviously it's because of, what was the guy's name?
Ido Portal.
Yeah, so he became just like the guy who does the salt and the meat, you know, there's certain trendy things and all of a sudden everyone's looking at it.
Yeah,
but, I
mean, so I guess my teacher would have probably issues with Ido Portal because he's probably like quite, you know, taking it to another level, I guess. But yeah, so it's got that, but I don't teach that so much these days because of a knee injury I've got at the moment, and actually it's quite intense on the knees. I worked out. So I teach mainly a vinyasa flow, which is a movement-focused yoga, if you like. Quite a strong class often. I'm teaching later tonight. So I only do that a couple of times a week. So it's just a kind of a part-time thing just because I enjoy it and, you know, but it's not like a career, as it were.
Yoga, and we talked about this before. Definitely something would like to look into. And I'm doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the moment, and so many BJJ practitioners, they say like it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But one of the things I probably could say I'm different from other BJJ guys, that I actually stretch all the time.
You do a lot. You're
I
very
stretch
flexible.
like I can do full splits and all that. One definitely what is quite stiff is my shoulders. Like, you know, when people put their hands behind their back and can actually clinch them. On one side, I'm this far. On the other side, I'm like this far.
Yeah, I can't do that currently. I have in the past been able to do it, but right now.
But I think it also can be to do something with the muscle mass. If you have bigger muscle mass on your back, that's where it's just...
Yeah, there's loads of factors in that.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I would say with yoga for anyone looking to go and start it is don't go to one class and go, no, I don't like it. It's like going to watch one movie and saying, oh, I don't like movies.
Well, it's like dating girls.
You know,
date one you don't like, and then that's it. I'm not.
Yeah,
gonna date
exactly.
anyone.
So, like, say, go to lots of different teachers, lots of different styles, and lots of different studios.
100%.
Right, and then you can, and then give it time, and then you're not going to get the same. You will get good results quite quickly, but it's not like running, where within 6 weeks of running, suddenly your whole body's changed. Right? Yoga doesn't kind of work like that. But even if you're kind of good at stretching, like we see lots of ex-dancers, ex-gymnasts, yoga in the West is a physical practice, I guess, but yoga is much more than that historically.
100%.
And even in the West, where you do the physical practice, what is going to transpire is more about the mental side of things that you'll get the benefit from, which will permeate through to the physical and other aspects. So yeah, definitely give it a go. Even though you're flexible, that means you're going to be great. You're going to have no issues with that so much, but there'll be something else.
I think for me was the biggest problem was the time, because also being in Bali, going from like BJJ, then I want to do some weights, then I want to do surfing, then I want to do all those things.
You spend your whole day doing exercise, which is, I did 3.5 hours of yoga yesterday, for example. I was on holiday.
Eventually. Okay, so this is about Warrior Pause, this book, so people definitely check it out. And the second book you suggested me, well, the game was one of them.
Greatest salesman in the world.
Yeah, it was the greatest salesman in the world. I remembered, I actually read it before a while ago, but I already forgot. I remember the story. So the story goes about this camel boy who wanted to be a salesman, and then he goes to this cave and meets the whole thing with the Jesus. I don't really like. It just went kind of religious.
Funny thing with that, actually, when I read the book, I read it as it's meant to be read, right? So this book should take you 10 months at least to read.
Oh, right.
The reason for that is because in the first scroll, so the book is about 10 secrets to becoming a salesman, but it's not really about sales, it's really about life.
It's about life, yeah.
And
the scrolls, 10 scrolls.
Yeah, and in the first scroll, when I was reading that, I was like, the first scroll says, form good habits and become their slave. But in there it says, I will read each scroll 3 times a day for 30 days before moving on to the next one. So I was really diligent. So I read the scroll. I read it twice, then I read it third time out loud. And then I didn't even look at the chapter name of the other scroll. So I did a month of that, then a month of the other. And so by the time I read all 10 scrolls, which was 10 months later, I'd actually forgotten what the story had been about, and then I had to kind of reread the beginning before I read the end. And so the first year that I read this book, and this is a book that I read every day.
That's what you mentioned to me. You're still reading every day.
Yeah, so I still read every day. But I do it in a slightly different way. So the first 10 months I read it, 3 times a day. And at work, I'd have like a PDF version on my calendar. So at midday, it would pop up. And I would just read it like a PDF, so no one knew what I was reading. So I'd read it in the bathroom in the morning, then I'd read it at work on the PDF, and then I'd read it in the evening out loud. And I did that for 10 months, and I noticed massive transformational shifts.
So you'd be sitting on a toilet and saying, greet each day with love in your heart.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but now I have a copy in each of my bathrooms, and I've got a copy on my Kindle of just the scrolls on my Kindle. And basically, when I'm doing my business in the morning, I read it, but I just tend to read it internally rather than out loud.
Yeah.
And I just read one scroll a day. So, say Monday will be scroll 1, Tuesday will scroll 2, and so on. So I don't read it for 30 days at a time, but I just read one scroll a day now. And I've been doing that now for 10 years.
Nice one, man.
Yeah.
When I got to the scroll part, it straight away reminded my favorite book, which is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, great book as well.
And I actually met Stephen in person in Canada without knowing yet about the book, because my house lady or my landlord, she was like, my friends are a part of organizing the seminar, and they're getting people in and whatever. If you come in and do the little bit of selling the book in front, you're gonna get in for free, which was like $300 per day. And I was like, sure, whatever. And I went in and I was like, listening for a bit. Oh, it was boring. And then the girlfriend at the time who was seeing, she was sending messages, do you want to go hang out? And I was like, sure, I'd rather hang out with you. And I literally went and left it. And only a year later, anyways, so the story goes, my landlady, she come over like really upset with me. Why did you leave the seminar? It cost so much. Then she gives me the book, the main book, the big one for adults.
Yeah.
And I also shoved it somewhere under the bed, never read it. And then a year later or 2 years later, I found his son's book, which is 7 Habits for Highly Effective Teenagers.
Yeah.
And I like started, oh, nice pictures, and it actually resonated with me. And I really, and then I all of a sudden all the dots start linking together. It's like, that's the guy, that's the book, and then that's where I got the big book and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so 7 habits, and it's about the habits, and you know these are kind of representing the same concept.
Yeah.
And you know, again, when I was reading the habits, I said like, why we were taught as Catholics or whatever in schools like 7 commandments. These should be the 7 commandments. So those, just like here, the scrolls, those should be the things what, since we're kids, we should be raised with. You know,
absolutely. I mean, I remember I had that 7 habits on my desk at Sainsbury's. I had it stuck up there, and I love his book, and you know, all of his audios as well. And for me, I don't normally recommend this book because to really get value out of this book, you have to read
you need to do that.
You have to do the work. And most people, I've only known 2 people, and not personally. Like, one is my ex-girlfriend's mum, and the other one is Tony Robbins, who have read this book in the way that it's designed to be read, and myself now, because it's like anything, you need that repetition.
Yeah.
And you need to kind of create that in your head over and over in order to...
For that to sink in properly.
And so if you just read it like once, you go, oh, that's good value, but you're not going to really understand
and definitely not audiobook version.
No.
For audiobook, it gives you a little bit idea of it.
But you could be doing other things. And not really. So, so I don't normally recommend it as a book, but I would say that it is been a life-changing book for me in terms of... you know, how I think about things now. And again, it's not really about sales so much, but like, you know, master your emotions, and, you know, being nature's greatest miracle, power of laughter. All of these are such great messages.
Which scroll was saying this shall pass?
Oh yeah, this is it's actually on my backpack. Actually, I've got that phrase. This too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Yeah.
I think it's which one is it? It's either
Master Your Emotions.
I think it's
maybe?
Master Your Emotions.
Yeah.
But and that for me, like many years ago, like 8 years ago, I went on this meditation thing called Vipassana. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a 10-day silent meditation retreat. Pretty strict in terms of like, you can't make eye contact with anyone, you can't talk to anyone, no pen, no paper, obviously no mobile phones. You're meditating from like 4:30 in the morning to like 9 o'clock at night. Anyway, in that period, you've got 3 1-hour blocks where you have to meditate and not move a muscle and like be completely still for 3 1-hour blocks.
Jesus Christ.
And as soon as and I think I've done a speech on this somewhere on YouTube, but as soon as you kind of start sitting still, you get like a really bad itch somewhere, and you've got to like, and you can't like wiggle your mouth or nose and try and scratch. And I mean, obviously you can, no one's stopping you, but like you're stopping yourself. And then what you realize pretty quickly is after a few minutes, it does pass, right? And you go through this whole thing about observing things. And for me, that Vipassana meditation retreat, one of the main 3 things I learned was about this too shall pass. And even though I knew the phrase because I'd read the book many times, for me to actually live it and embody it, I went through that experience, and I realized, not just intellectually, but, you know, in my bones, as it were, that this too shall pass, right? Everything passes, right? So even though I've got, you know, you break your leg, or you go for a breakup, or you get, you know, COVID or whatever it is, right? Everything passes, right? Nothing, not even the universe itself is permanent, right? It's going to come to an end, or it'll expand forever, whatever it is, it's going to change. And intellectually people get it. They're like, yeah. But then, like, for me, that is probably my number one mental health stress management strategy, is recognizing that what is right now is not what will always be. And so that's why I've got it on my bag. I remind myself of that. That's probably my key phrase in life, one of my key phrases in life.
Before I started doing podcast, I did these little interviews, and one of the interviews I did was with this guy who swam 7 oceans. They call him the Ocean Walker. His first swim
nice
was
name.
English Channel. He swam from Dover to
Canada or somewhere.
to France. And so he was this office worker who kind of hated his job, and he always wanted to do something sporty in his life, but there was injuries and all sort of things. He couldn't do it. He was actually a very good swimmer, but then he couldn't do proper swimming, like competing swimming. And then he's like, I need to do something with my life. And I forgot now, there's this interview somewhere on YouTube, but he read this book which inspired him to, get what he wants to do. And then every time he would get in this cold water and do all this, like this uncomfort. And then his slogan was, I don't know word by word now, but the idea as well, this too shall pass. In a way, a little bit of uncomfort can bring you to whatever. And this guy was just insane. Hopefully I'm going to get him back to podcast again, and such a good inspiration for everyone. Now he's traveling the world, giving speeches, teaching how people to swim. Like one of the craziest swims, in my opinion. Like most of the swims were crazy. So he did these 7 long, they last for like 20 hours. One of them was in Los Angeles. No, it was in Hawaii, where he would swim, and about 2/3 of the swim, he was stung by the man of war, this horrible jellyfish. And like this whole stomach was just like, and he was in this excruciating pain, but he continued swimming. He finished the swim. In the meantime, he was vomiting and all that stuff, but he finished the swim and he got out. Like there's a photo of him just all stomach messed up. And like, I was just listening. He wrote also the book, and very, very interesting. Anyways, this is our 3rd segment. We're going to have one more.
Is this our 3rd or our 4th? I can't even remember.
This is 3rd.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, it's just going by. Okay. Boom. Here you go. We are back. Had some toilet breaks and everything. People. I asked you about 2 people who inspired you the most. One of them was Tony Robbins. I think he's probably the biggest cahoon and whale of inspiration. I think, but what happened, there was another guest I had, whose favorite book was the Waking Up the Giant in Me.
Awaken the Giant Within,
Yeah, and I was listening the audio. I remember I read it a while ago, but this time was an audio, and I didn't know that Tony is actually doing the voice on it as well.
Yeah.
And he's like...
He's got a husky voice.
Yeah, that husky voice.
He's almost lost it completely. It's a serious issue for him.
Really?
Yeah, that's why when he does his seminars now, like the UPW, Unleash the Power Within, I think he only does 2 days of it, and the other 2 days is other people, because he has to protect his voice. Because I guess he didn't, I haven't done enough voice work myself, where you train how to use your voice effectively. Which is actually why I did, we were talking about stand-up before we went on air, but I did like a singing course years ago, because I wanted to learn some of those techniques, but didn't really learn it from that course, because it can be really taxing and that's your main livelihood, is your voice, right? So Tony Robbins was definitely influential. I've listened to probably at least a dozen different audio programs that he's had, like the ones from way back in the 80s and 90s, because now I think he doesn't do so many. Money Master the Game I've read, Awaken the Giant Within, Unlimited Power. The other books are kind of like not his proper books, I think, but so definitely influential, because a lot of what he did, even when I was listening to him in 2006, when I first started getting into him, and I did Personal Power 2, which is his signature program, and I don't know many people that have done the full 30-day program, but I did it twice, once in 2006, once in I think 2011, and I did it both the full 30 days, and I did notice it was quite transformational when I did it, and I did it properly. I did all the exercises he was talking about, everything, and so I do think he was one of the people. And then the other person, I guess, was a guy called Sean Stevenson, who's got a podcast which I really rate, called The Model Health Show, and I definitely recommend people, if they want to know more about health and stuff, other than checking out my stuff, obviously, he would be the kind of the other resource that I would definitely go to if I was recommending just one podcast to listen to on health and wellbeing. That would be it. And so I think I've learned a lot of different things from him. I mean, some of it I already knew, but he tells things in a nice, accessible way, very well researched, very balanced, has some great guests on as well. And so I think that's been quite influential in a way as well. So yeah, those two people definitely. But it's such a difficult question to answer.
Yeah. No, it's one of those just to kind of get into that. I definitely want to ask you, like, do you remember growing up as a youngster to having mentors in your life, like actual physical?
No, I didn't. And that's the thing is, like, the idea of mentors has only really, come to prominence for me the last decade in terms of when I started going down this rabbit hole of personal development and so on, and I started learning effectively all the different habits that people have got who are successful, and I started noticing, 7 out of 10 people say, have a mentor, 8 out of 10 people say do meditation, 9 out of 10 people say drink a green juice or whatever. And I started doing all these habits, which ultimately led me to my health philosophy. But one of the things that I probably, which is probably why I like, things like the other movie, I'm not sure if I put it in there or not, was like The Karate Kid.
Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And I think one of the things I like about that, and I absolutely love Cobra Kai as well now.
Yeah.
And,
I binged watched the whole thing
in
a couple nights.
I binged like series 3, New Year's Day, all done. And then I was
some
watching
of that
it.
Was so silly.
I was watching it when it was on YouTube, and I had to pay for the episodes, and I was paying £1.49 an episode, and I did it all in a night. Anyway, one of the reasons I think that it's so successful, and I think that actually people do want that mentorship, right? Like, I would love as a 14-year-old to have had like this wise older mentor who could have guided me through things. Like, yes, I've learned a lot through my dad, through some of the way that I'm observing him behave, whether it's how he cooks or how he looks after his family, and I had various sort of mentors maybe within the Scouts, although they might not be like officially mentors as it were, but I don't think I ever really had that like you see in the classic movies, that kind of
wax on, wax off.
Yeah, exactly. Or way of the spirit, a peaceful warrior kind of mentor, or
What did you think about Karate Kid with Jackie Chan?
I actually only watched that for the first time like about 3 weeks ago.
Really?
Just because I was like, I think I've seen it, but then I started watching bits of it and I was like, I haven't seen it. I mean, I didn't really like it too much.
It was better fighting stuff and better choreography, obviously, than Karate Kid.
But some of it, you think, well, is it because I'm watching it as a 40-something man rather than a 14-year-old kid?
I think the acting wasn't really.
No, and it was just trying too hard to be something it wasn't, maybe. I don't know.
And also, like, everyone will be comparing it with the original one.
Yeah, but then having said that, maybe kids love that one.
Yeah.
Right, because I remember people in my generation hating all the new Star Wars movies, right? Phantom Menace and all of that. But kids that grew up with those love those ones. So I think it's an age thing as well, like when you first get exposed to it.
With the Cobra Kai, the TV series, who you were rooting most? I was rooting the most for the used to be bully and
Johnny.
Yeah, he was just. I so wanted him to succeed, but every time he would get himself in fucking trouble. He gets drunk and fights and does this and does that.
Yeah, flawed character.
And the feelings what I had when the main evil old fart came back, everything was boiling in me. It was like, oh, you fucker, you're back to mess shit up again.
Yeah, Martin Cove, I think, is the actor.
But then every time when I build this kind of a hatred towards these characters, what I do, I usually just watch YouTube interviews with them. And all of a sudden, like, oh, actually, they're just
acting. It's called acting. But I remember watching years ago, there was a YouTube video which is pretty famous now. It's like, it's saying Daniel is the real bully. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No.
Oh, it's brilliant. And also, I remember watching How I Met Your Mother. I don't know if you've
I've seen it.
And,
a lot of it.
And Barney Stinson loves, and he's like, and he's on his stag do. They get Ralph Macchio, and he goes, "Look, we even got the Karate Kid." And he goes, "No, he's not the Karate Kid. Karate Kid of William Zabka. Blah blah. He's the bully. He's the hero." And I was like, yeah, I mean, when you look at it, and you kind of see the YouTube video where they're saying like Daniel's a real bully. It was quite funny, and I think they pulled some of that into the series. Like,
well, funny enough, in the Big Bang Theory, Sheldon is rooting for the sun, not for the that snowman. There was this scene where they basically, so the snowman was dying because of the sun, but everyone was usually rooting for the dying snowman, and Sheldon is like, no, I'm rooting for the sun. It's like, anyways, I don't know if that.
But that's it.
How
It's kind of like everyone. The point, I guess, is everyone has got their own view of the world, right?
Yeah.
And what's right or wrong or hero villain or whatever, and it's all down to perspective. It's all, you know, and this is really important in today's society because everyone is becoming quite polarized and thinking, oh, I'm right, you're wrong, and you know this, you know, and all of that. So, and that's just not reality. Is that like everything is relative. I try and teach people we live in a relativistic universe, and what that means is like nothing is tall or short or good or bad, like, or happy or sad, unless it's relative to something else. So I was listening to a podcast on the way up here, and it was all about anxiety and things, and she was talking about, well, we can't live with happy feelings all the time, because if you did have happy feelings, firstly they wouldn't be happy feelings, they would just be normalized feelings, and things are only happy in relation to what's sad. And I say to my nieces, who are quite like 6, 7, 8 years old, and I'm trying to talk to them that, like, I'm not tall, I'm tall relative to you. But then if you put me next to a 7-foot basketball player, I'm going to be short relative to them. And so everything only means something in relation to something else.
Retrospective or in comparison.
Yeah, in comparison to something else.
I liked Joe Rogan, who I'm listening very often, probably too often. I think he's one of the things what he also repeats in different podcasts was about the worst you ever had was what the worst you ever had. When you say like, oh my God, this is the worst I ever had, that's your experience. My worst could be way different. And then for you to compare with the worst is just, that's what it is. Just recently I saw that on Facebook, there was a post when this girl partying in this park somewhere with, it's like a festival, and then she's like, the cap shows like, oh, I'm suffering from the anxiety, like post-traumatic, when they said PTSD, right? And then someone writes down, it's like, it's not like you just were deployed in Normandy, you know, on a D-Day, you're just partying and you're just annoyed that you lost your friends. And so that's the worst for her. And then for the different generation back in the days when they were sent to war against your will, whatever, that's the worst for you.
Yeah.
And then this is where it's like this generation clash as well, when it goes. When like for me, what I would say, listen, I experienced sleeping on the floor in Canada, no money, nothing, start doing door-to-door sales, and I know how fucking crazy that is. But someone who hasn't experienced, they will say like, well, but this is the worst for me.
They're like, my Wi-Fi is taking 5 minutes to load up.
Exactly.
This is the worst day of my life.
Yeah.
I can't get hold of Instagram. You know?
And then try to go and explain them. And that's the other thing, like when my dad, remember when as a kid, I would complain, oh, Dad, why I need to do all these chores? You know, all my friends are playing in the street, whatever. And my dad would always say, when I was your age, I was working from morning till late night and did all these chores, whatever, and I didn't say anything. So when he tells me that, it doesn't make any sense, because I wasn't there. I don't know how it feels. You can't. So that's why in the future, if I do have kids, instead of trying to tell them, I would love to travel with them and bring them to these certain places. Like when I was in Jakarta, you know, I was riding with a scooter around and seeing these, I went to actually slums or whatever they call them, seeing these dirty, disgusting rivers who just stench, and these kids playing around, topless, running, and but you see these happy faces, smiley faces, and then instead of me trying to explain that to my child, which is pretty much impossible, I would take that in the shoe, and then it puts you in perspective, and all of a sudden you feel like, oh my God, my life is so good.
But this is the thing, is like, I remember like when I was traveling, and you know, it was the best education, really.
100%.
And I was in Vietnam, and you know, I'd go to these museums, and I'd see all these like aborted fetuses that were from like Agent Orange. You know, the thing that
in that book, they talk about the warrior pose. I'm in that place when he
really? Yeah.
he went to Vietnam, and he was talking about
so I would go to these things, and you see these babies in jars and things, and I remember once, like in, I don't know if I was in Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City or somewhere like that, but I remember seeing like a guy who had, I think, basically one arm and no legs, and he was getting around on a skateboard, like just pulling his arm. And I'm like thinking, you know, how great have we got it, right? Like, you know, because the fact that if someone's listening to this or watching this, they're in the top 2% richness of the population of the planet, probably, right? Yeah. And it's not really to take away from anyone's personal experience, because like you say, like that could be the worst that they've ever had, because that's their experience of life so far. And there are always grades, because like, you know, no matter how bad you've got it, probably someone else got it worse. No matter how good you've got it, someone else has got it. And we have this comparison nature within us to say, you know, how am I compared to my school friends, or how am I compared to the rich 100 million follower person on Instagram? And so we can always complain about something. But I absolutely agree. Like, I think when you go and you travel and you see those less fortunate with yourself, you become way more grateful. And, you know, speaking of gratitude, because this is a really important point for me, is that, again, when I started going to the Yes Group, I remember I went and saw a speaker. And at the end of the talk, he was doing a Q&A, and he challenged people to do like a 30-day gratitude practice where you write down 3 things that you're grateful for each day for 30 days. And I started doing that in 2011. And for me, because I'm someone who's naturally got quite an analytical and maybe even critical mind, I can see the negative quite easily in things, and what's wrong, and, you know, how to fix it and whatever. But when I started doing the gratitude practice, after about 3 weeks, and certainly after 4 weeks, my mindset started to shift, and I started to see the good in things and the positive things. And I ended up just carrying it on, and I still do it to this day now. So I've got a book, several books now, with the gratitude in, that I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for every day, and I've been doing that for over 10 years. That
is a very good exercise, especially before you go to bed, to do the 3 things you're grateful for.
I do it just before I go to bed, and also about 2.5 years ago, I work with clients, and whenever I work with clients, no matter where they are happiness level, I always say, you know, this is a good practice to get into. Anyway, some clients were feeding back to me about how they've gone from a negative mindset to a positive mindset by doing it. So I said to my parents, or my family, should we do a 30-day challenge in our family WhatsApp group? And we write down 3 things that we're grateful for 30 days. And so a few of them said yes, a couple of them didn't, you know, which was a bit annoying. Anyway, after about 30 days, my mum wrote in, you know, day 31, and carried on. And I was like, oh. So we've carried it on, and now we're on day 1017.
Oh no, that's
so every
cool.
day in our family WhatsApp group, like, you know, around 8, 9 o'clock at night, you get this kind of flurry of messages about, you know, what you're grateful for. And it can be that day, it can be that year, it can be your life, whatever. But you get to kind of share lots, and so I do that, plus I do my own gratitude. And so
your gratitude usually got pissed, met this girl.
Well, what was today will be about, no, yesterday was like going to like a 7 a.m. yoga class, followed by swimming in the sea, followed by a 9 a.m. yoga class on the beach, and then going out for like a drink with my mates. And, you know, the thing is, there's so many things to be grateful for.
So many things. Listen, the thing, just getting out of your bed, you are healthy. You have roof over your head.
We have access to the internet currently. We have, you know, we have all these amazing things.
You remember the book, The Secret, and the film afterwards, the Gratitude Rock. Do you remember the story about this guy who's basically sent this rock to someone who was very sick? But the idea was like, you have that rock every time before you go to bed, you take it in your hand, and then you say those 3 things you're grateful for.
Oh wow, yeah.
So that goes so far. And right now, when you just said as well about how we comparing, like, someone is always going to be worse, or someone is going to be better than me. But in the book, that's why I opened the scrolls again. One of them was mentioned that always try to be better than you were yesterday, and it's about you. Don't compare yourself with anyone else. It's about the battle with you. And that's why so often athletes and other performers, they would say, I'm not comparing myself to anyone else. I want to be better version than I was yesterday.
And this is what I say to the kids as well, is I say, look, you know, I always say, look, because I always say, what does practice make? And they always say perfect. And I say, no, practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes progress, right? Because if you go for perfection, you're going to be eternally disappointed, right? It doesn't really exist, but all you want to do is progress. And as long as you're progressing, you're going to be happy. And you want to be better today than you were yesterday, knowing that tomorrow you're going to be better still. But I also say, it's not like a straight line where it goes up. It's more like the stock market, where it goes up a little bit, then goes down, up, down, and then sometimes you have a big crash, and then you kind of go up. But generally speaking, there's a trend line. You know, and I say, a bit like the kind of COVID cases where you kind of see up and down, but then you see a trend line. And you want to see the trend line going up in terms of your progress, not look at each day and say, well, I didn't do so well. But generally speaking, this year you'll be better than last year. And
I like that you have that up and down. The way I look at it, I have point A, that's where I start, and this is my goal. I don't know, like be the best stand-up comedian ever. So, and then you have this line which not going to be always straight, but it would be like, oh, you go there and take different loops. So, because we have these different stepping points, which sometimes take us away from that target, but we still maintain kind of going forward. And it's all about just maintaining that forward direction.
It's like, I remember when I did my first NLP course and they were talking about aeroplanes, right? Aeroplanes are like off course 90% of the time, right? Because they're never going direct straight line to where they want to go. They're always off course and they're always correcting their course.
That's perfect that you just mentioned that analogy. So you heard of the book, and we talked about habits and how important it is to maintain your habits. The Atomic Habits, have you heard that book? You read it?
Yep.
Yeah,
James
so
Clear.
and he uses one of the examples that the tiny little habit, if you maintain it constantly every day, can change your course. And that's what he was comparing with a plane. If you change course just by a tiny little degree, that like in a big time frame, it's going to make huge difference.
Absolutely, right? This is like, you know, driving a car,
Hallelujah.
pointing anything, and this is why I tell kids as well, like when, especially if they're going to start to misbehave, for example, it's like, well, you know, here you are now, and I kind of draw it on the border. So like, you know, you can decide, say, not to volunteer to speak, right? And that's going to take you there. Then you're going to like cower away and not do this. Then you're not going to go for the job interview or the university interview. You're not going to get the job, the girlfriend, whatever. And you end up here. Or you put your hand up, you volunteer, you do this, you do that, you do that. You get the job, you get the interview, you get the confidence, you get the girl or the guy or whatever. And then you end up here, and like your life is totally different because each decision you make stacks upon the one before it, and it will, you know, it will lead you in one direction or the other over time, right? So
that's also from 7 Habits. The first one was be proactive instead of reactive.
Reactive. And waiting things to come
like,
to you.
and that one stayed in my head so often. Like when you see a fight, do you go and join the fight and make it more mess, or you just be a bigger man and just step aside to it, you know? Or listen, we can talk about these things in ages. Listen, before we wrap this up, there are certain things what you mentioned you would like to talk about.
Well, I was going to say, well, I mean, for anyone listening or watching and wants to kind of connect or know more, especially about, so I've spent the last over a decade distilling down and working out what it is that high performing individuals do from a habits perspective, a healthy habits perspective that make them perform not just in the short term but in the long term, and have the health, vitality and energy they want. And so all of that is in my framework called the Leadership Beat Model. But I run these free masterclasses online, which I've only started doing recently. So but if they want to attend one of those masterclasses, there's a couple of dates coming up, and there'll be more in the future depending on when they're listening to it. So just for them to head to TheThoughtGym.com. So the Thought Gym is in thinking, TheThoughtGym.com/masterclass. So you'd have to probably put it into the actual address bar. So you get, because you want to go to TheThoughtGym.com/masterclass.
There you go.
No, that's
that's the book.
That's the book, yeah. So if you go into the with no spaces though, so www or whatever, TheThoughtGym.com.
Shouldn't be that on your Insta?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, if you click on that and then you click on the first one,
there you go,
top one. Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, so that'll take you. So TheThoughtGym.com/masterclass, and that's.
And so anyone who wants also the Thought Gym, your Instagram account.
So anyone who wants to connect with me on social media, whether it's YouTube, there's over 200-300 videos on YouTube. It's the Thought Gym. Twitter, the Thought Gym. Facebook, the Thought Gym.
Everything's the Thought Gym.
Instagram,
just Google
the Thought
it.
Gym.
And as long as you see Harry's chest with the Superman S letter on it.
Well, that's actually an H. It's a super H.
Is it?
Yeah, if you go to the Instagram, you'll be able to see it.
Oh, no.
It's a super H. See, look.
It's a super H.
For Harry.
It's just,
But it's done in the
really? Is that what it's for?
Some people,
But then it's not super H, it's just H.
yeah, but people don't. Yeah, people are like,
You're H man.
There's me taking off actually in that picture. There you go, I'm flying.
What is the deal with this? I was like, that's it.
So yeah, we probably don't have too much time to talk about this. This is mouth taping overnight. So when you go to sleep, you'll probably quite like to try this.
Oh, because I just talk too much.
No,
I probably need during the day.
What it does is it helps with so many things, but effectively a lot of people are mouth breathers, and even though consciously you might have trained yourself during the day to breathe through your nose, which you should be breathing through your nose, spoiler alert, not through your mouth.
Yeah.
But when overnight, often we can revert to mouth breathing. And it will do a number of things when you mouth breathe, from changing the bacteria in your mouth, but also making you more dehydrated, activating your stress response, not having you feel as energized when you wake up. So when you tape your mouth like that, like just a small piece of tape, doesn't have to be across the whole mouth like I did once in a while, but so that you can open it if you needed to, and it's not going to be like you're not putting duct tape or anything.
And
like
can
that.
spice up your love life as well if you do that more often.
Maybe, yeah.
Because
But it
Joe
will help
Rogan
you.
has a podcast about, he has a guest who was talking about all the nose breathing. You probably should check it out.
I probably have heard it. It's probably with James Nestor. Or,
Yeah.
So James Nestor wrote a great book called Breathe, and
I started reading it as well, I think.
Yeah, Patrick McGowan wrote The Oxygen Advantage, which is really good. So this will help you breathe through your nose overnight, and if you've got a partner who snores, this will help stop them snoring probably. But you'll wake up, you'll feel more refreshed, you won't be as dehydrated.
And it doesn't fall off? You don't take it off while asleep?
Occasionally I might do, like, maybe like 4 a.m. I might end up taking it off or something. Yeah, that's the red light therapy. So when I meditate, often I have infrared light, so near infrared light.
That's why you're so brown.
It doesn't tan you. It's not UV light. It's because I've been on holiday in sunny Devon. That's why I got the tan.
That's why you're so brown.
So I do lots of weird habits, some of which I talk about in the masterclass. So, check out rebounding and.
But listen, it's awesome always to try something else, something new, and you don't know where it can lead you.
Yeah, so definitely head to that masterclass there. Can check out, like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years now.
Yeah,
and
you kind of know almost what you're talking about.
Yeah, you'd hope to think I'm a bit more qualified now.
Yeah. Are you certified or are you qualified?
Yeah, that's it. Now I'm both certified and qualified, but the certification doesn't make me qualified. But I do have now a master's in health and well-being, which didn't really teach me a huge amount compared to what I already knew. But it's a certificate. Not that I've ever actually, with the corporates I've worked at, no one's ever said to me, do you have a certificate in health and well-being or anything like that? They just,
take your word, basically.
Well, they trust the results, I guess, and
Yeah.
and I know what I'm talking about. And when I deliver stuff, I'm always delivering really great, actionable, practical advice. Is what I've been told. People like it's not very. There's theory, there's data and science, but it's mainly that people can actually implement and take things away and do things, right? Like like mouth taping overnight, right? Just get a bit of surgical tape, try it. Someone in my comments there, I can't remember, would have said I don't know if it was this comment or whether it was in the Facebook one. Maybe this stuff is very effective.
Promote it on.
Oh yeah, promote it.
I have those all the time.
Maybe it was on the Facebook one where he said it was like life changing for him.
Every time when they say,
there we go, brilliant. Maybe it's Tony. Mouth
brilliant.
taping, it changed my life.
Mouth taping, it had changed my life.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so it can be a life changing practice. So you can try mouth taping. Just some micropore tape and try that tonight.
I'm just
It is a bit
waiting
weird.
when someone was like, I asked that to my girlfriend and now I'm single.
Yeah, I do a lot of weird habits, like not least of which mouth taping. I wear funky glasses overnight, to protect my eyes from blue light and things. So not a lot of this stuff is not conducive to necessarily having a girlfriend, unless that girlfriend is on that same kind of path, or at least very forgiving.
So listen, we are almost like saying goodbyes, but
Yeah.
before we say goodbyes, can you give me a little insight of your diet at the moment? Like, what is the diets you prefer? What do you suggest? And do you do any fasting, any of that?
Okay, so I do intermittent fasting. So I typically do what I call not a time restricted eating, but I think about when my last meal was that day and then try and make it typically 16 hours, at least 12 hours from last meal. So yesterday, for example, I finished eating at 3:30, which it's only because I ate quite a big lunch and then didn't want to eat later, and then I had something around 11 today. But it might be like somewhere between 12 and 18 hours.
And you've been doing that for a while now?
I've only been doing for about 2 years or so, 2 or 3 years. My philosophy is on my website in terms of the actual food style, which is called Panlo 80/20, which we don't have time to go into. But there's a blog on my Harry Kalymnios website.
There you go. So people can check this out.
Yeah, so you can just go to harry.hk and you'll find the blog. But ultimately, the simple way I would tell people to do is little things like do have a long fasting window if you can. I sometimes do fasts for like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days where I'm just having like vegetable juice. I do vegetable juices most mornings and vegetable smoothies most mornings. I do what I call front loading, so I front load my nutrition at the beginning of the day. I stack it with my vegetable juice and smoothie might have upwards of 15 portions of vegetables in, and I probably eat somewhere between 15 and 20, 25 portions of vegetables a day.
But you eat meat? You eat fish?
No, I don't eat meat or fish.
You don't eat meat or fish in how long now?
Meat has been about 10 years. Fish has been about 9.
Wow.
Dairy's been about 13. Gluten's been about...
So you vegan
10.
Or vegetarian?
No, I would say megan. So my version of vegan. So I used to not have... I think there was a period of about 4 or 5 years where I didn't eat eggs. But now I do eat eggs occasionally. I do put collagen in the smoothie. I do... Yeah, so but I don't. But yeah, so it's a very complicated reason as to why and whatnot. But yeah, effectively, I would say for most people, with the caveat that everyone's an individual and got the different beliefs and whatever else, most people could do with eating way more plants, even if you're like a carnivore as such. I would say, minimum of like say 10 portions of veg a day is what I would recommend. And if you just eliminated processed foods, or at least ultra processed foods, they're gonna have some processed foods. I have some processed foods, but you don't want super processed foods. Yeah.
Just be mindful.
So anything in a packet, anything made by a plant and not by a plant, like in a plant and not by a plant, anything that needs an advertising campaign to get you to buy it, probably shouldn't eat it. Anyone that's got a celebrity endorsing it probably shouldn't eat it. So it's very straightforward stuff, right? It's it's all the unsexy stuff, and eat natural, eat
which is total opposite the way you look.
and then you'll feel better, So yeah, I would say, but also not. I have balance, right? So I don't do things too extremes, and I'll eat ice cream. Like you'll see on my Instagram stories the other day, I was having like a vegan kebab and chips, right? I was like, I'm on holiday, I'm doing what I want to do, because I don't ever say no to anything, and I've not given up meat. I just haven't had
homeostasis.
Yeah, but I just haven't had it for 10 years.
Yeah.
But if I want, I could eat it tonight, right? It's probably not going to happen, but maybe I would, and I may well. I'm free to change my mind on that.
Exactly.
Like, so I don't want to identify my lifestyle diet as being, I'm this or I'm that, because then that ties into my identity as a person, and my identity as a person is someone that likes to explore and do different things. Right now I'm running a 10-year experiment, as it were, but in the next 10 years maybe I'll go and be pure carnivore. Who knows? But right now it kind of works for me at the moment, the way I'm doing things, I think.
Nice. And he's almost 44. Look at him.
Yeah, 2 weeks time.
Yeah, I was just saying that he looks less than 40 for me, for sure.
Yeah.
Late 30s.
Yeah.
Listen, Harry, so much thanks towards you from here, and like we did 2 hours, and there's still so many things to talk about, and we, hopefully in the future we can.
This is the problem. We get two speakers in a room.
Hey. There you go. Now I know where that button is. So yeah, the podcast, the title of the podcast used to be A Collection of Blueprints. I thought it was too pretentious, too out there. Now it's just Renars podcast, so everyone understands. Renars podcast, simple. Listen, thanks again, and Pano, and that's it. We are finishing this.
Thank you so much, guys.
Little dance. Hey.